All right, 5-second warning. All right, we'll call this general committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We start our meetings with the following land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional and treaty territories of the Williams Treaties First Nations, including Nishnawbek peoples of Hiawatha, Curve Lake, Alderville, Beausoleil, Jordina Island, Rama, and the Mississaugas of Skugog Island. For generations, the Michisagi Nishnawbek have cared for these lands and waters, guided by knowledge, ceremony, and responsibility. We recognize the ongoing impacts of these treaties, the injustices that occurred, and the enduring strength and resurgence of Indigenous communities. As we live and work here, we commit to reflection, respect, and meaningful action in the spirit of reconciliation.
And the Council for the City of Peterborough recognizes the principles contained in our Constitution and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We'll now take 30 seconds of silent reflection. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem. Strong and free from all we stand on Lord thee. Oh, land, All right, so just a few announcements. Councillor Parnell is joining us online. Councillor Hakey sends his regrets, and Councillor Crowley will be late. Also, our eScribe technical system is not working this evening, so we will be going back to voting manually. So whenever there's a vote, we'll just go around the table and ask everyone if they're a yay or a nay. And Councillor Purnell, you'll have to verbally give us a yay or a nay. So we'll just have to be a little bit patient with each other and with the chair, but we'll get through this evening. So with that, I have adoption of minutes of May 25th, 2026. Can I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Degay. Any comments or questions, errors or omissions? We will take a vote, our first manual vote.
Councillor Lachica. Councillor Burke.
Yay.
Councillor Vassiliadis.
Yes.
Mayor Leal.
Yes.
Councillor Duguay. Counselor Baldwin,
Yes.
Counselor Real,
Yes.
sorry, Counselor Beamer.
Yay. And I think Councillor Purnell as well.
Okay, thank you.
So that is carried. Thank you. Madam Clerk, any disclosure of pecuniary interest this evening?
Mr. Chair, I'm unaware of any at this time.
All right, so we have 2 items coming out of closed session and 3 consent items. So we'll start with the consent items. So the first consent item coming out of closed session, memorandum of understanding that council approve the recommendation outlined in closed session report CSPS 26-001 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the Commissioner of Community Services as follows. That staff be authorized to proceed as outlined in closed session report CSFS 26-001 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the Commissioner of Community Services. Our second consent item this evening, litigation, that council approve the recommendation outlined in report LSOCS 26-021 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the city solicitor as follows. That closed session report LSOCS 26-021 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the city solicitor respecting Fire Safety Commission's updates be received for information. Sorry, there's 4 items coming out of consent. Apologies. 4. The third consent item coming out of closed is expropriation, that council approve the recommendation outlined in report LSRS 26-016 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the Commissioner of Legislative Services as follows. A, that council pass a bylaw approving the expropriation of parts of and interest in lands known municipally as 2317 Television Road and authorizing all steps required to complete that expropriation and obtain possession of the expropriated lands in the form of a bylaw attached as Appendix A to report LSRS 26-016 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the Commissioner of Legislative Services. And B, that council authorize staff to proceed as outlined in closed session report LSRS 26-016 dated June 2nd, 2026 of the Commissioner of Legislative Services. In the fourth consent item coming out of closed session, litigation, that council approve the recommendation outlined in report LSOCS 26-021 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the city solicitor as follows. That staff be directed to proceed as outlined in closed session report LSOCS 26-021 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the city solicitor respecting HRTO litigation. So those are the 4 consent items. Now we have 2 items coming out of closed session. The first one, hate crimes training, that council approve the recommendation outlined in report CAO PC 26-005 dated June 15th, 2026 of the Director of People and Culture as follows. That report CAO PC 26-005 be received for information. Can I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Burke.
Can I speak to it quickly?
Yeah, anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Burke?
Just through the chair, I'm wondering, maybe through you to Mr. Barber, if I was really moved by some of the stuff that I heard in that session, that would be beneficial. Like, I'm trying to speak to this without speaking to it, but would it be appropriate to waive client solicitor privilege so that I, as a counselor, would be able to talk about some of the stuff we heard in the hate crimes training?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I actually can't answer that question for the councillor. I'm not actually privy to the content of what council heard or the context in which it heard it.
Yeah, I feel comfortable, Mr. Chair, that we could waive that privilege. I'm thinking specifically about some of the people in the room besides the person that was training us and an understanding of what our city is doing in this regard. I heard some stuff that would be really helpful for me to be able to talk about as a counselor around the data and other things. So that's my reason for bringing this up.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Councillor Burke. Yep, so I think so. Yep. So moved by Councillor Burke, Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just briefly asked Richard whether the information council received was delivered by a lawyer and whether anything was solicitor-client privileged, and Mr. Freeman has informed me that the information was not. Given to counsel by a lawyer in a solicitor-client privilege situation. So I think the question asked by Councillor Burke is actually moot.
Okay, yep.
Thank you. I guess the semantics of it were off, but I'm just wondering, as a counselor, it would be helpful for me to be able to talk about some of the stuff. If we can't address it tonight, maybe there's a point down the road where I can ask Mr. Potts when he's back what the procedures are around in-camera training that we receive and how we as counselors can use that training, because I definitely heard some things that I wouldn't want to be in conflict with the in-camera confidentiality of it, but I think that it would be helpful for me to be able to talk about the training that happened. I guess I'm just kind of confused as to what we're meant to do with that training. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burke. Any further comments or questions? So it's a receipt for information. We'll take a vote.
Councillor Lucica? Councillor Burke?
Yes.
Councillor Vassiadis?
Yes.
Mayor Leal?
Yes.
Councillor Beamer?
Yes.
Councillor DeGay?
Yes.
Councillor Baldwin?
Yes.
Councillor Real?
Yes.
Councillor Parnell online?
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to get into eScribe, but yes to that vote.
Thank you. Almost.
Thank you.
And that is carried. And I think some e-scribes working, but others aren't. So that's what
Oh.
we're working on behind the scenes. So just to technical staff who can hear me, once it looks like it's fixed, if you can maybe let the clerk know, but I know some are working and some aren't. But when it looks like all of us can try, please let the clerk know. And the clerk can't get in right now either. So the last item coming out of closed session, expropriation, the council approved the recommendation outline report LSRS 26-015 dated June 22nd, 2026 of the Commissioner Legislative Service as follows. That respecting a proposed land acquisition, staff be directed to proceed as outlined in closed session report LSRS 26-015 dated June 2nd, 2022 of the Commissioner Legislative Services, moved by Councillor Vassiadis. Comments or questions? We'll take another vote.
Councillor Lucica? Councillor Burke?
Yes.
Councillor Vassiadis?
Yes.
Mayor Leal?
Yes.
Councillor Beamer?
Yes.
Councillor DeGay?
Yes.
Councillor Baldwin? Councillor Real?
Yes.
Councillor Parnell online?
Yes,
And that is carried. All right, colleagues, we'll move to our consent agenda. Please let me know if you'd like to speak to any of the following items. 13A, articulating aerial platform fire pumper vehicle. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Mayor Lil. 13B, affordable rental housing property tax class. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 13C, municipal housing facility designation for 221 Rink Street. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 13D, 2026-2027 OPHI funding allocation for 170 Dublin Street. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 14A, December 31st, 2025 financial report. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Mayor Lil. 14B, 2027 budget information. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Mayor Lil. 15A, asset management levels of services policy. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 15B, tower concurrence at 95 Marina Boulevard. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 14C, designation of 164 Sherbrooke Street. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 15D, notice of objection for 123 Simcoe Street. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Seeing none. 15E, designation of 27280 Perry Street. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor DeGay. 16A, Peterborough Housing Municipal Services Corporation transfer report. Anyone wishing to speak to that? Councillor Real? Or did it? 16A, good pull? I don't think so. Nope, okay. No, that's okay. Councillor Real. Okay, sounds good, everyone. So up for consent this evening, 13B, 13C, 13D, 15A, 15B, 15C, 15D. 13A has been, yep. Councillor Chick, did I see your hand or you good to move it? Okay, Councillor Crowley, since you're, is there something you wanted to pull out that?
Yeah, I think there was something I was going to pull. However, I don't have my notes up and I just got here, so I
Well, we'll
apologize.
wait for you.
So,
No, we're not. So can you sort of remember which one it is?
maybe Natalie could help me. Oh, it's not Natalie. I'm so sorry. Oh, Stacy, I believe I have an amendment on file, don't I?
Thought I was supposed to be the cowboy.
Yeah. He's lucky the chair's in a good mood tonight.
Chair, it's 13C and
Thir-
15B,
Oh, two of them?
I believe. Yes? Thank you. And I apologize for my tardiness.
So Councillor Crowley's pulling out 13C and 15B. So up for consent, 13B, 13D, 15A, 15C, 15D. Moved by Councillor LaChica. We'll take a vote, and Councillor Crowley, e-scribe's not working, so we're voting manually.
Dude,
That's
that's
done.
missed it, bud.
Councillor LaChica? Yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Burke?
Yes.
Councillor Crowley?
Yes.
Councillor Bassiadis?
Yes.
Mayor Leo?
Yes.
Councillor Beamer?
Yes.
Councillor Duguay?
Yes.
Councillor Baldwin?
Yes.
Councillor Real?
Yes.
Councillor Parnell online?
Yes.
And that is carried. All right, so thank you everyone for your patience getting through all that. So we have two presentations this evening. The first one, 12A, Stormwater Utility Program Development, and we have Mr. Ian Boland. So Mr. Boland, thank you for being here this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm actually really excited to give you this presentation tonight on the stormwater utility program. It's been something we've been working quite hard on for the past year or so, or just under a year. With me today, just behind me, I have Curtis May. He's our acting manager of water resources. He's been instrumental in bringing this this program together and this project together. We also should have Nancy Hill online. She's our consultant with ACOM. So Nancy's been supporting municipalities in Canada and internationally in the management of financing and their municipal infrastructure over the last 30 years. She's worked on stormwater fee studies for 17 Canadian municipalities, 8 of which are currently implementing or have the new stormwater fee. Nancy also oversees Canadian Infrastructure Benchmarking Initiative, which benchmarks the performance of 50 Canadian municipalities in the management of their infrastructure, including the funding of stormwater infrastructure. So she's quite knowledgeable, and she'll be available to answer any questions that I am not available to, or I can answer. So just going to move this up a bit. So I got a number of slides to get through today. I'm going to try, I might breeze through some of them quite quickly. But on the agenda, what we're going to talk about is the city's current stormwater funding, funding option assessment and revenue review, public engagement that we've undertaken over the past few months, our preferred funding option, our implementation plan, and some information on stormwater funding source consolidation. So where we are right now with the stormwater utility review, we started back In 2025, as you'd be aware, council approved the transition to a dedicated stormwater fee that was done through budget 2025 through report FCSF 25-003. And this interim fee is it's still based on the assessed value of a property, but it was moved on to the utility bill. So residents of the city would see that fee, that dedicated fee right on their utility bill. And that's kind of where we've been for the past year. In April 2025, or sorry, in summer 2025, we commenced this study. We've been working through the engagement on alternate funding options. And then where we are right now is presenting to you. And today, what we're presenting is really just the option for stormwater funding, how we're going to collect it, not full implementation of the fee. And I'll explain this a little bit later, but that portion of it will have to go through the budget process. So we'll be back here again when you're reviewing the budget or the next council is reviewing the budget and later this year. So just a quick look at 2026 sources of stormwater funding. The city of Peterborough funds stormwater management activities really through a combination of sources, including the dedicated stormwater fee that you're probably familiar with. We still fund some works, capital and operating through sewer surcharge revenues, the flood reduction master plan capital levy, as well as the general tax levy or capital levy. This year, stormwater related funding was approximately 10.4 million, of which that 4.3 million or 41% was collected through the stormwater fee. So as I mentioned, the current interim fee structure is based on assessed property value. This structure enabled a rapid and that administratively efficient launch. The current rate is $32.76 for every 100,000 of assessed value. So to put that in context, is if a house was assessed at 300,000, their fee would be around $100 a year. So given that the existing fee does not accurately reflect, the various runoff stormwater that's generated from a property, the city retained AECOM in July 2025 to undertake this comprehensive utility rate analysis. The objective of that analysis was to identify a fee that really improves fairness. It's better aligned with the impact that a property has on the stormwater system. So it's moving to a utility-based fee similar to a water charge or similar to a sewer charge that's based on how much you generate or how much you actually use. So when we started off with the study, we wanted to set our guiding principles for assessing different rate options. So we looked at these four guiding principles for stormwater rate options. We want something that's fair and equitable. We want something transparent and justifiable. Ratepayers can understand how their fee is determined and how it can be defended. It's administratively efficient. We don't want something that's going to, be a burden on staff and others to calculate. And we want it to encourage environmental protection. So we want to, reduce the negative impacts of stormwater runoff. Ultimately, that is our end goal. So. And this is a very telling graphic you'll see here. So to help assess stormwater options against the city's current fee, AECOM determine how property owners contribute to the interim stormwater fee against their estimated impact on the system. So you'll see on the left, under the interim fee, and this is the $4.2 million that we're currently collecting, 75% of that comes from residential properties in the city. 25% comes from non-residential properties. If you compare that to the graphic on the right, that is the impervious area or hard surface in the city for residential properties and non-residential properties. So you can kind of see here that the burden of how the fee is calculated based on the assessed value is, much more is going to the residential portion than the properties that actually generate the most runoff in the city. So initially, what we looked at was a number of different options for calculating a fee. These are used, all of these different options are used across Ontario. So the first three options were, based just generally on land use of a property to calculate a fee, based on the total property area or based on a runoff coefficient type analysis. And then we compared those with our guiding principles. As you can see, the first three were kind of knocked off the list because they weren't they didn't have a good overall ranking. We carried forward the last three, which are similar in nature, but they break down they break down a little bit in more detail. So the first one is really, actually, I'll just go to the next slide here. It gives a better example of it. So the first one is really the same fee for all property types. So if it's single family residential, large or small, or an apartment building, everybody pays the same. The next one breaks it down into large and small residential properties and something separate for apartments. And then the last one is really three different options where it's three different fees for each of those property types. And that's what we carried forward into our first phase of engagement with the public. Something else that we're also looking at is stormwater incentives. So this is opportunities for property owners to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff on their property. And in doing so, they may be able to receive various credits or subsidies. And I'll get into that a little bit later. So looking to the future at some of our short-term funding needs, as I mentioned, in 2026, we collected around, or we used approximately 10.4 million towards stormwater services, and it's going up slightly in 2027, and that's primarily attributed to additional capital works programs, our state of good repair program, as well as various flood reduction capital levy requirements for various capital projects that we're doing. And then the chart on the right is just a bit of a breakdown, of where that funding is coming from. And it's just, as you can see again, there's a number of different sources. Some of it's coming from capital levy, some of it's coming from wastewater surcharge, good majority from the stormwater fee. So on our first round of public engagement, January, February this year, we asked the public for feedback on the three stormwater funding alternatives and related incentive programs. We used multiple channels to reach people. So feedback wasn't limited to one channel. Outreach included an engagement page on Connect PTBO, social media, a virtual public meeting, an online survey, and importantly, one-on-one conversations with some of those larger landowners. In total, the survey was completed by 141 residents, and the virtual public meeting had 31 registrations. Just to highlight, what we heard through that first round of engagement, I think overwhelmingly, the public preferred the stormwater fee to be calculated based on the impacts to their property or based on their property impact. Managing stormwater was also viewed as quite important. And residents, I think, were most concerned, in our city with flooding and the environmental impacts. Looking at the various options, so we had 62% of residents, participants ranked this, the residential fee by housing size and type as their first choice. And when I say size and type, that means the size of the house, if it's a small, medium, and large building, but also considers what is on the property as well. So if they have paved driveways or, for whatever reason, they've paved some of their backyard, that is also factored in to determine the size of the house. So in May 2026, we had a follow-up round of engagement as well. After we had identified sort of a preferred funding model, we held a second round in May 2026 to bring the model back to the community and test how it was perceived. At this stage, the goal was not to revisit all of our three options, but to confirm whether the recommended approach was understandable, viewed as fair, and practical to implement. So again, we used a mix of web page updates, social media, in-person meetings, direct conversations with landowners, and online feedback. The follow-up really helped us, confirm where support is strong, where concerns remain, and what issues need to be addressed. We also had the opportunity to present to the Peterborough Environmental Advisory Committee, who expressed, endorsed our preferred option, which was option number 3. So some of the takeaways from that engagement, there was actually low awareness of the existing interim fee, even though it was on, residents' utility bill. There was quite a few people that weren't aware of it. Environmental protection and climate resilience were key priorities. There was that preference for a fair stormwater fee. And there was broad support for incentives, including credits for multi-unit residential properties and condos. The perception that a revised stormwater fee would increase overall costs, but I think we had an opportunity to kind of explain that a little bit more to residents and property owners. So getting into our preferred funding or our preferred rate structure. So the fee by housing type is recommended as that preferred stormwater rate structure for residential properties. Residential properties are tiered actually into groups based on the housing type and the hard area size, and non-residential properties pay fees directly proportional to their individual measured hard surface. So this model provides the greatest connection between a property's runoff contribution and the fee that it pays. So the availability of comprehensive, data is available in the city. So we're allowed to do this kind of more finite analysis. And what we end up with here is what we refer to as a billing unit. So the average residential medium detached house represents 1 billing unit. So 1 billing unit would have 1 fee associated with it. That represents around 80% of all properties in the city. And then on the residential side, everything's a proportion of that. So if it's a much larger house, much more hard surface, it is charged 1.4 billing units. And then if it's much smaller or if it's an apartment building, it goes down to 0.7 or 0.4 of a billing unit. And the reason we did this is it creates more fairness in how the fees collected without the administrative burden of calculating a separate fee for every province, every home in the city. So, and again, under all scenarios, the residential fee or the non-residential fee is calculated using the actual hard surface. So just a bit of a closer look at that. So this analysis, this assumes 2027 rates, and we are, if it was status quo, so we had moved up to 4.96 million for the stormwater fee, just to ensure we have an apples to apples comparison here between assessed value and our current model. And on average, under all scenarios, all the residential properties would pay less. And I know what you're thinking. You're saying, Ian, if everyone's paying less, well, who makes up the difference? And there's some properties, not really on the residential side, but there's many properties in the city that have no assessed value. So they would be charged a fee. There's also some properties in the city that may have a really high assessed value relative to their footprint. So if you had a really high assessed value under the old system, your stormwater component of that could be high, but your footprint could be quite low. And that's generally there's differences all across the city, but that's generally the reason you see this. And also we've transitioned more of the collection of the stormwater fee to the non-residential side. So this is just a sample of, how the fee is calculated on the non-residential side. So this is a smaller non-res property. The total area is around 1,200 square meters. There's 200 square meters of green space. We're not accounting for that in the calculation, so we take that off. You have 1,000 meters of impervious surface. You multiply it by, our charge per square meter, which is actually the same. It's based on the residential billing unit, just converted into a square meter cost. And that's where you come up with your current stormwater fee for this particular property. And with the non-res side, and I'll get into this, there would be credits available to them. So if they're have stormwater management in place, which most newer non-res properties would, they would be eligible for a credit. And then there's just another example here of a much larger business, much larger hard surface, may have had a lower assessed value in the past, but its runoff contribution to our system would be quite high. So you can see here, this is an example where the fee could go up a fair bit, but again, opportunity for credits, which is what we're after here, if they have stormwater management on site or if they're willing to install stormwater management. And I talked a little bit about the credits. But this is an example of what we're looking at right now. This has not been finalized, this part of it, but I think this is where we're leaning. So there's opportunities to get a credit if you have peak flow reduction on site, water quality treatment, runoff volume reduction. And for those properties where maybe they don't have space for something like that, we also have credits available for implementing things like salt management plans, spill response plans, general litter cleanup on their site. So. On the residential side, right now we've chosen not to go specifically with credits, but to continue offering subsidies. The reason being credit systems can be quite administratively burdensome. They take a lot of staff time to review. And overall, for the, the potential reduction in annual charge is relatively small. So we feel continuation of the, the rain garden subsidy that the city already provides, which helps reduce runoff to the stormwater system, and other positive benefits would be the best thing to continue. So on the implementation side of things, what we still have to do after tonight or after council is we're looking to finalize the rate, create our implementation roadmap. We're still looking at some waterfront and tax exempt properties and hoping to speak with them and the impacts that it might have. We're going to draft the stormwater utility bylaw. We're considering creating a dedicated stormwater reserve similar to the sewer surcharge reserve. We're going to prepare our communication materials and finish the billing system integration. And then last but not least, for council's consideration tonight, and as we work towards the 2027 budget, is a consolidation of all stormwater related costs into the stormwater fee. So should stormwater funding continue to come from multiple sources or be consolidated under the stormwater fee? And if so, how can it be phased in? So looking at that, we talked about the status quo stormwater fee for 2027. On our current projection, adding that $620,000 annually, we'd be at $4.96 million. As I mentioned, there's quite a bit more that we spend through our, our capital programs, our operating expenses on stormwater. So we've looked at three different scenarios for a consolidated stormwater fee. This would be scenario one. We continue funding around 4.96 from the stormwater fee, and then we consolidate most of the wastewater surcharge expenses, which is generally our capital works program, the stormwater component, as well as funding related to environmental services operating and water resource systems operating. So those two combined would be scenario A. Scenario B is where we completely, remove ourselves from the wastewater surcharge, and we're funding an additional $750,000, which is the approximate amount that we're using towards flood damage reduction, which comes from the wastewater surcharge. And then the last scenario C, full consolidation. We move all of the flood reduction capital levy funds projected for next year, as well as a component of the general tax levy, which is the estimated value of the work that Public Works is doing, street sweeping, catch basin cleaning, things like that, all of that as a revenue source here from the stormwater fee. And just again, a repeat of the recommendations that you see in your report, which I'm sure you've read here. So, and with that, I will take any questions. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Bull, to you and your team. Appreciate that. So we do have some questions. I have Councillor Burke, Crowley, DeGay, Baldwin, Reel. Councillor Burke, questions?
Chair Beamer, thank you so much. And I really want to thank Commissioner Freeman to sort of pick up on Mr. Boland's points about the public's perception and how that was sort of, they saw things differently from the consultation. And I also saw things differently from your answer. I was under the impression that property size would be more of a burden on the residential side as opposed to assessment, but the data and in your presentation and what you emailed me shows that it's actually not. So thank you for that. I scratched my page of questions around that. I think I'm still frustrated, not in a personal way directed towards you all, but I'm frustrated that as a counselor, a big concern of mine throughout this process hasn't really been addressed in this report. I heard a lot about the idea this report is looking at how we're collecting the fee. It's about being understandable and efficient. And one of the biggest things I get as a counselor in town ward, especially being a little bit different living situations than other parts of the city, is that this bylaw is based on property ownership. And I have a lot of residents and constituents that pay their water bill because what we've done is we've taken this surcharge out of the tax and we put it on the water bill. And so I have constituents that are renters, they are not property owners, that are paying the stormwater surcharge. And they're asking me, why am I paying this if the bylaw specifically states that this charge is meant for property owners? Will that be addressed?
Commissioner Freeman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ian, just for Mr. Boland's benefit. So Councillor, I believe that has been addressed. All of the billing and that's why we got a little bit off to a little slower start. Unlike the water bill, which may be billed to the tenant or the owner, the stormwater charge we have clarified and it is being solely billed to the owner. So if there is a situation where the tenant is paying the stormwater charge, that is an issue between the owner and the tenant, not the billing from the city. The city is only billing the owner for stormwater management.
Okay, thank you. And then I imagine then in your didactic with the different housing types, you had one that was a 6-story or 4-story, and you circled the unit on the top floor in terms of how that charge was being separated based on that unit. I assume that if that's an ownership scenario, but if it was the property owner owns the entire building, then that would be calculated by the entire footprint of the building. Does that include height or does that not make a difference?
Mr. Chairman, I believe I understood the question. So regardless of height, the stormwater charge is always going to the owner because often the tenant, and I think this is the point the councillor is making, the tenant can't have any influence in terms of how much stormwater is actually being let into the system. That is an owner issue, not a tenant issue.
Then one more question, please, through the chair. I think that another sort of personal frustration is I'm the vice chair for Peterborough Housing Corp, and they are a corporation that is wholly owned by the city. They're funded by the city. They provide affordable housing on behalf of the city, and we own a lot of property through Peterborough Housing Corp. And I don't know how to respond when we put in these situations where it's kind of like the dog eating its own tail. We're imposing a charge on PHC, and then we, the city, are having to now pay for that charge. And so that's some weirdness that happens in these situations where we're dealing with properties. And I think that at some point it would benefit all of us to sort of figure out how we deal with Peterborough Housing Corp in these situations. The other big example was the garbage, but I'm just wondering why Peterborough Housing wasn't consulted on this. If their staff were consulted, it definitely didn't come up to us at the board level in terms of what these changes were going to look like, or in terms of what we as board vice chair and chair we might have some input on what would work best for that corporation. We didn't get that opportunity.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to jump in, and perhaps Director Boland might want to supplement my comments. Of course, all of the public engagement was in fact public, so they could have participated. However, to your point, um, and I think this is the bigger issue that the councillor is alluding to, is that Peterborough Housing Corp, and I stand to be corrected by my colleague behind me, pays property taxes. And I think that's probably the context of your larger question there. And should they in fact pay property taxes? So that by virtue of the fact they've paid property taxes in the past, they've always paid for stormwater fees, right? So that's the premise. That's where they've been, rightly or wrongly. They've always paid it through their property taxes. What we're now creating is the opportunity to have these conversations through pulling it out of the property taxes and creating the fee. So to your point, should they pay property taxes? That's really a determination of council. If council doesn't want to charge them, levy them property taxes, then probably that impacts the subsidy that they might enjoy from the city, which probably nails it back out. But admittedly, that's a budget conversation. But I just want to put it out there.
I think it's less, through the chair, and I'll stop. I truly will stop. It's less about the tax situation, but we are funding Peterborough Housing Corp's operations, right? And we are making decisions like this and like the garbage situation that have a financial impact on how PHC operates. And without, in my opinion, consulting with them directly, not only are they a large stakeholder, but they're a large stakeholder that we, the city, are funding.
Okay.
You know?
Yep. Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Councillor Carley, 2 questions.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to either Ian or Commissioner Freeman. I know that in the report it mentions that there is one large property owner that is seeking an exemption, I believe, or is talking about seeking an exemption. I think it's Trent. Am I correct? Am I out to lunch? Did I dream it? I thought it was in the report.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that the conversation about Trent and whether or not they would continue to enjoy an exemption would be part of the next steps that Director Boland referred to in his list of bullets there about next steps. So I think that's more to stay tuned on that very issue.
Okay, and that leads me to my second question, through you, Chair. Will there be a potential for multiple properties, large property owners, let's say churches, to then say, oh, well, if they're applying for an exemption, I'll apply for an exemption. And then we get a mad rush of properties saying, well, I shouldn't either, and I shouldn't pay either. And then we slowly whittle away from, for example, Trent being possibly $100,000 to $200,000 a year to multiple properties asking for an exemption. And then we're right back where we started, and we're raising the stormwater fee on the backs of the residents again.
So through the chair, I'll start, and I may defer to Nancy online or possibly Alan over here as well. So based on our research and looking at comparative municipalities, we are treating this as a stormwater utility similar to, water bills that all these properties get, similar to sewer surcharges that all of these properties pay. There would be nothing that I'm aware of in the Municipal Act that would prevent us from exempting them. I think it would only be this council that could, give an exemption to any of those other properties. Trent being the exception under the Trent Act. And I'll defer if there's any other comments.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Thank you, Councillor Duguay.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. When appropriate, I would be prepared to remove the receipt of the report. Mr. Boland, thank you for your presentation. Also, thank you for your many discussions leading to tonight's meeting, including the Peterborough Environmental Advisory Committee. You spoke to the residential versus the ICI, institutional, commercial, industrial. And so there will be if I understand correctly, there'll be somewhat of a writing, a course correction with that category, because there's a disproportionate amount assigned to residential use. And if you will, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Boland specifically, if an industrial use confirms that they have already through site plan stormwater measures in place, they benefit from some credit in this new model, correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Duguay, that is correct. They wouldn't automatically get the credit. It would be something you would apply for and provide the correct information, but yes.
And if I might, Chair Beamer, Director Boland, you had a screen that offered some weighting factors on how the credit, I believe how the credit might be determined. There was a chart. I just want to get to that. Thank you. So I noticed within that chart, you do speak to some traditional engineering techniques plus newer like bioswales and more green related approaches. Is that's built into this potential model, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Duguay. Councillor Baldwin.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. Mr. Boland, thank you for your presentation. Having read the report and having listened to you, I can understand now when my grade 9 math teacher asked me to pay attention and look at the calculations. So I think I did that, but it was useful for me tonight and over the weekend. Where did the billing units come from? There was 0.4, 0.71, and 1.4. Like, why aren't they something different? Why are they what they are?
Through the chair, Councillor Baldwin, I'm actually going to defer that one to Nancy and give her a chance to speak, and she'll really be the best person to hopefully explain that in a way we can all understand. Are you there, Nancy?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Baldwin. Yes, so what we did was we used aerial photography and we identified the impervious area for all the properties in City of Peterborough. And what we use, common for these approaches, is you take the average single family detached home, and that becomes sort of your base billing unit or your base unit. And we said, okay, we know that the average detached single family home has, 200 and something square meters of hard surface. And then we also said, well, what about other properties? Like, is there significant variability between different property types that we should consider them differently, or are they all about the same? And when we did that, we said, oh, okay, we know that townhomes, duplexes, etc., on average have 40%, 50%, 70%, etc., of the hard surface. So we think, okay, well, we think that's significant enough where we should then charge them a different rate and not charge them the same rate as the average single family home. And likewise, and we went through all the different residential types, and we determined that if there were residential types that were essentially the same, maybe just a few percent difference. Then we said, okay, to keep this administratively simple, let's group those together. But anyone where we discovered that it was significantly different, then we would say, okay, on average, and this is based on measuring in the City of Peterborough, if it on average was had 70% the amount of hard space, hard surface, then we said, okay, you get charged 0.7 or 70% of a billing unit. Likewise, if you had 40%, then you would get charged 0.4 or 40% of a billing unit. I hope that's clear.
Through the chair, it is clear. Are there deviations between the 0.4, 0.7, 1.0, and 4 then?
Through the chair to the councillor. So we found that there was a slight difference, whether it was and this is per billing unit, per dwelling unit. So we found for a triplex, it was maybe, it was about 0.4. For a quadplex, it was maybe more around 0.37, and these are averages. And within the group, we also did a variability analysis, and we said, okay, is there great variability where we shouldn't lump them together? And we found for these residential types, there was not a lot of variability. There was a little bit, but it wasn't a significant amount. When we got to the non-residential, we found huge variability. So that's part of the reason why we said, okay, let's group the residential properties together because there's a little bit of variability, but not enough to justify the administrative effort to charge them all separately. When we got to the non-residential, we said the variability is huge. There are not as many properties. Let's charge them individually. But for the residential, because there was much less variability and there are a lot more properties, to keep it administratively simple, we found it was, we said, okay, it makes more sense to group them together. Hopefully I answered your question.
You did. Thank you. Second question, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Boland. Ian, I had a constituent who looks after one of the local churches. It's interesting that Councillor Crowley had mentioned this, and they did the calculation based on their hard surface, the parking lot, and they calculated an amount of money. The question they wanted me to ask is twofold. Number one, would an individual church be exempted? And number two, if they decided to depave their parking lot and just use dirt or grass, would that result in a reduction in the amount of fee they'd have to pay? Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Baldwin. So a couple of, I guess, simple answers to that. To the first part of your question, would they be exempt? The answer would be no. The way we're proposing it right now, there's no exemptions for those properties that were previously tax exempt. To the other part of your question, if they depaved, absolutely, because there's a bit of a delay. The way we calculate the fee, it's based on, we get aerial images, and I won't get into the technicalities, but we monitor what's on site. If that asphalt was removed in our next update, their fee would go down.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Boland and Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boland. Councillor Rhea.
Through the chair to Mr. Boland, if everyone is getting, or hopefully getting, a reduction, what's the plan to make up the shortfall?
Through the chair, Councillor Riel, that's actually an excellent question. So based on the knowledge coming from ACOM and their analysis at a number of other municipalities in Ontario, there's actually a low uptake on the credit program for many people. I hope that's not the case for us. I hope we have a strong uptake actually, because I think there's a lot of benefit there. But we will be looking at, when we look at the consolidation of the fee, factoring in the assumed credits into it. So essentially, if a credit is offered somewhere, it needs to be picked up somewhere else. However, in saying that, you get enough of these, especially these larger businesses, reducing runoff, improving water quality. Enough of that is happening in the catchment, and that's really where we want to go. That reduces our capital need as well, right? That means our storm sewers can be a little bit smaller. That means our ponds can get a little bit smaller, right? Like, that's down the road, but that's ultimately the goal.
To the chair, my second question is, how would the non-residential get a credit? Is it after they institute stormwater reduction? And who's going to investigate that they have done this?
Through the chair to Councillor Riel. So there would be an application process to apply for a credit under one of these categories you see up here. I would say most, if not all, properties that have implemented the first three types of credits would have the necessary documentation already in place, possibly already on file with the city through a site plan application or a subdivision or condominium development or something like that. And then it would be on Curtis and his staff to review those applications and approve the credit. We're really hoping to make it a very simple process. But importantly, most importantly, is we want to follow up, with these credits as well, right? Like a big thing on ICI properties, they kind of put these stormwater management measures in place and then they forget about them sometimes, not all. So to maintain your credit, you're just going to have to prove annually, maybe biannually, that these systems are still in place and they're functioning. And that's the real benefit of a program like this. So.
Thank you, Councillor Reel. Any further questions? Mr. Boland, thank you for you and your team.
Thank you.
Colleagues, if you're not in eScribe, if you could just maybe try entering it, I think we may be up and running. Okay, so mine's not, but if everyone else is, then that's great. So we'll send our next vote out on eScribe. But if you can, try to enter eScribe. So we have recommendations in front of us, A, B, and C, moved by Councillor Duguay. Councillor Duguay speaking.
Briefly, Mr. Chairman, as a precursor to this meeting, Councillor Cheek and I have met with Mr. Boland and discussed this on several occasions. The Peterborough Environmental Advisory Committee has also considered this. This is a very logical and rational model. Councillor Real and his queries asked some good questions that, well, you know, somebody goes ahead and does, well, how do we know it's still working? And so there'll be a monitoring program. But what is most important, if it's fair to the residential property owners who are paying a disproportionate amount, and it encourages the ICI group to undertake stormwater measures. And I think collectively what that would mean is that eventually our pipes might be a little smaller and our storm ponds not as big, and that will be cost savings in our capital program. With that in mind, I'm fully supportive of this staff presentation and the direction. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Duguay. Mayor Little.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I support, of course, the recommendations, but in many ways, as you review this report, it's a transformational report for the city of Peterborough managing stormwater, which will eventually significantly improve or continue to improve the quality of water in the Otonabee River. We in this community experienced two 100-year storms in a 2-year period, 2002, 2004. And of course, since that time, there's been several intense storms that we've all experienced. And often through that process, our treatment plant had to go on override. The fluid was flowing into the Otonabee River. And of course, eventually this will be a plus for our First Nation colleagues in Hiawatha to improve this situation. Page 8, of course, reflects a fairly aggressive capital plan to make this happen. But I also overriding all the material in this report is the sense of fairness. And let me give you a very good example. We are seeing now several hookups of homes that were annexed into the city in 1997, 1998. Recall that I'll use the Simon subdivision as my example this evening. Of course, those homes were built in the old Smith Township. And of course, because they had septic beds, they had to have extra large lots to accommodate the size of the bed. And I want to really thank staff for bringing this element of fairness, not to unduly penalize those homeowners that had former septic beds that are now hooking onto the sewer sanitary system. So that's a real plus. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Little. Councillor Burke and Crowley. Councillor Burke.
Yeah, Chair Beamer, thank you. I guess the one thing that's just coming through all this, staff did a great job. I appreciate that. You know, I've always been sort of like hesitantly going through the motions with this to see where it comes, and I appreciate the work. Like the mayor said, the equity attached, the fairness attached to this is important, and I appreciate staff taking the time to help me understand what that looks like, and Mr. Boland tonight. I guess the one thing as a counselor that's just a little bit odd is that, you know, let's remember why we did this, right? We did this because we were in a pickle with the tax rate, and some good things have come out of the program because of that. But the selling point at that time for us to separate this, Trent was mentioned as the example of someone, an institution that doesn't pay, but you know, as the example of look at all the revenue we will get by people that historically haven't paid. So I'm a little bit confused why the Trent Act was mentioned. And I'd love at some point for us to be updated where that's at, because I was always under the impression that that was the example that had been used for us to get a little bit of an additional revenue when we're up against all these infrastructure challenges and tax rate pressures. So I always get a little frustrated when that sales pitch moves after we've made our decision on something. So if we could just be updated at some point on where that stands. I was always under the impression that Trent was now going to be included as someone we were accepting this charge from. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. Councillor Crowley.
Am I able to ask Commissioner Nelson a question?
Of course.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Commissioner Nelson. So recently we had the Crowley Heights Park public information session, the redevelopment public information session. And I know that we're talking about stormwater management, and there's areas of the city that are historically awful when trying to deal with runoff. For example, the end of Cherry Hill and Kawartha Heights Boulevard. I know that was mentioned as being potentially part of the redevelopment of the park. Is it possible to use some of the stormwater management fee revenue that we get in order to apply to different park redevelopments if they qualify as requiring runoff management? Is that possible to sort of keep the cost down of a park redevelopment by sort of using multiple sources of revenue?
Through the chair to Councillor Crowley. So what you're describing is some areas that we already know that we have some challenges from stormwater. Those are actually situated and some recommendations within some of the previous flood reduction studies. And so we are trying to, again, obviously we've been working through some of those projects on priority and level of impact, et cetera. Obviously, likes of the Jackson Creek diversion, obviously big impact, expensive project, but does have a significant impact. We have a number of those throughout the city. The one you speak of is one of those exact type projects. So what you're describing is the fact that it's just looking for the funding. What we're talking about here tonight is how do we collect that funding, right? And what this is looking at is trying to create a dedicated source of funding that is transparent, clear, and this is part of what Ian or Director Boland spoke to in terms of consolidating, because right now we're pulling a lot of that funding from various pots. And does it make sense to consolidate it, in which then the funding for those types of projects would all come from that one consolidated pot? So again, there's still work to be done here yet as we go through this and work towards that consolidated model. I think it is staff's preference to move towards that consolidated model so that we have that source of funding. But again, it's still all those strings attached to every dollar that's being pulled in many directions. So unfortunately, it's a roundabout answer, but that's the best I can do at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Any further comments or questions? Just very quickly, as one of my colleagues alluded to, the big selling point to this was 900 properties were not paying property taxes, which meant 900 properties were not paying anything into the stormwater utility, which means 900 properties were being subsidized by every other property taxpayer. One of the big ones is Trent, and I very much agree with Councillor Burke. We need to look into that. For what it's worth, no exemptions. I don't think anyone should be exempt from a stormwater payment. Everyone needs to pay their fair share. But because 900 properties are now paying the stormwater fee, that is why all residential properties that we represent are paying less. So I appreciate the fairness, and all residential properties now are paying less on this stormwater utility. So that was the big selling point, and I think this is an excellent program for a variety of different reasons, but that's a big one. And certainly from my perspective, no exemptions at all. Everyone needs to pay the stormwater fee and in the stormwater infrastructure since everyone uses it. Moved by Councillor DeGay. We will have to take a manual vote as the clerk's e-scribe are not up. So we're trying, everybody, just a tough night technologically.
Councillor LaChica?
Yes.
Councillor Burke?
Yes.
Councillor Crowley?
Yes.
Councillor Vassiadis?
Yes.
Mayor Leal?
Yes.
Chair Beamer?
Yes.
Councillor DeGay?
Yes.
Councillor Baldwin?
Yes.
Councillor Real?
Yes.
Councillor Purnell online?
Yes.
And that is carried. All right, moving on to our second presentation, final citywide community planning permit bylaw. And we have Ms. Kimball and staff. And Ms. Kimball, if you can introduce everyone with you this evening. And the consultant is Justine Janicoli.
Good evening, Chair and members of General Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce this presentation. We are here tonight to seek approval of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. My name is Caroline Kimball, and I'm the city's Planning Policy Manager. I've had the privilege of managing the CPP project from its inception. What began as an exploratory idea is now a modern, effective process ready to transform how we approve development in Peterborough. This initiative responds directly to a critical challenge. To support growth, all levels of government have acknowledged the urgent need to streamline approvals. To give some brief context, provincially, the goal is to build 1.5 million new homes in the province by 2031, as recommended by the Housing Affordability Task Force. Locally, Peterborough has pledged to facilitate 4,700 new housing units by the same target date. To achieve this, the Mayor's Task Force for Housing Creation recommended transitioning to a citywide community planning permit system, and this framework will replace multiple approval streams within a single expedited process. We have successfully secured resources to facilitate this change. The City of Peterborough secured a commitment of over $10.6 million through the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund, or also known as HAF, to modernize our planning processes in tandem with several initiatives aimed to expedite the construction of new housing units. The approval of the Community Planning Permit Bylaw is the last outstanding milestone of our funding agreement with CMHC. Additionally, funding from the Provincial Streamlined Development Approvals Fund allowed us to complete the background and strategic options report. Following Council's previous direction, we launched the project in the spring of 2024. After extensive community engagement and final refinements to the draft bylaw, which was released this past January, we are very pleased to present the final bylaw tonight. This milestone is the result of incredible collaboration with the community. I want to acknowledge the tremendous work of city staff and the support from our consulting team. With that, I'm pleased to introduce our co-project leads and policy planners, Mila Nguyen and Megan Peck, who have dedicated extraordinary time, effort, and professionalism to this process. I also want to welcome Justine Giannicola, project manager for the consulting team and partner with Dillon Consulting. They'll now present the final version of the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening, General Committee. I am pleased to present the final Community Planning Permit Bylaw. First, I'll begin by setting the context from where we're starting from. So over the past 50 years, the city's current zoning bylaw has evolved to reflect decades of growth and changes to priorities, with each amendment addressing the needs of that moment. That natural evolution has also resulted in a framework that is increasingly complex and difficult to navigate. More importantly, it no longer reflects the vision that is in the city's official plan. One consistent theme that we heard from the community was the need to shift to a more modern approach focused on better planning outcomes, which the project scope expanded to the entire city. We were able to reimagine the bylaw for the city as a whole. We've gone from hundreds of zones and site-specific regulations to just 15 clear and consistent land use precincts, reflecting one clear vision. This vision is one that is grounded in the city's official plan, which marks a significant change in how we're planning for and managing growth. In implementing the official plan, the bylaw is supporting the creation of more vibrant and complete communities and enabling higher density building forms. This project builds off a multi-year engagement process for the official plan, where significant community input has informed the bylaw and confirmed that the community vision and values in the official plan remain relevant. This bylaw works alongside the various master plans of the city for transportation and parks. The council adopted urban design guidelines and the climate change action plan to support a coordinated approach to managing growth. The community engagement program for this project was far-reaching, with in-person and online opportunities throughout the process. Early on in the process, we recognized that the technical nature of the bylaw could become a barrier to meaningful participation. To address that, we developed tools to enhance community understanding through interactive story maps, 3D models, and user guides to make the process more inclusive. We also met with people during their daily routines at community pop-up events and focused on reaching underrepresented groups to ensure that the bylaw reflected a diverse range of perspectives. Beyond the numbers, we expanded working relationships with all 7 signatories of the Williams Treaties First Nations and several urban Indigenous organizations. We also met directly with members of the business and development community, as well as community leaders. The result is a stronger working relationships that will last beyond this project process and support the successful implementation of the bylaw and a proactive approach to its refinement over time. I will now hand it over to Ms. Peck, who will present how the community's feedback has been integrated into the bylaw.
Thank you, Ms. Wynn. Building off the extensive engagement process, staff made a number of key changes to the bylaw to reflect community, council, and agency feedback, which I will summarize over the next few slides, followed by a discussion on next steps for implementation. The final community planning permit bylaw provides a refined framework for the collection of facility services and matters, outlining what can be accepted, how contributions are calculated, and how cash in lieu funds will be used, which is intended to provide greater transparency and clarity for all parties. This approach strikes a balance between supporting key priorities of the city while still complying with provincial requirements, such as those that limit the inclusion of green development standards within regulatory bylaws themselves. We heard very clearly from council and the community, including treaty rights holders and urban Indigenous groups, that affordable housing should remain the key priority for the collection of facility services and matters. The revised framework prioritizes affordable housing while also allowing developers to provide additional parkland or cash contributions to support climate initiatives that implement the city's Climate Change Action Plan 2.0, and also to provide other community benefits as directed and approved by council. Regarding missing middle housing, the final bylaw provides greater flexibility for developments for developments for low and mid-rise housing, making it easier to achieve different forms of missing middle housing types, and supports the goals of the city's official plan and housing action plan. The bylaw refinements were also made to address concerns about land use compatibility between existing employment uses and incoming new sensitive land uses, such as residential development. Informed by provincial guidelines, these provisions establish a high burden of proof for demonstrating land use compatibility. One notable change is the requirement for a mandatory Class 3 council approval for developments that propose a new sensitive land use in proximity to a major facility. It is also important to note that the bylaw places a hold on incoming residential uses along the Lansdowne Street East corridor, east of Ashburnham Drive, until the time that the city completes the terms of reference for a land use compatibility study, which is intended to be developed in consultation with nearby landowners. Based on feedback from members of the public and council, the final bylaw establishes a Class 3 maximum building height for applications subject to council approval. To address concerns about construction feasibility, refinements were also made to how the bylaw addresses built form transition by replacing the requirement for a 45-degree angular plane for a revised and more flexible setback and step back approach. Regarding transition provisions, the final bylaw also includes updates to this section to support changeover from the current development approval process to the new community planning permit process. These provisions recognize approved developments and give applicants with in-progress applications the flexibility to continue through their existing planning approval process or to transition into the community planning permit. Regarding precinct mapping, the final bylaw updates mapping changes to better align with the official plan and includes refinements to the open space and environmental protection precincts, particularly along Jackson Creek, Little Lake, the Otonabee River, as well as to capture ground truth provincially significant wetlands. The final bylaw is accompanied by 3 supporting bylaws, which includes the Facility Services and Matters Reserve bylaw, a pre-application consultation bylaw, and updates to the city's user fee bylaw, all of which will support the bylaw's implementation and associated change management efforts. The Facility Services and Matters Reserve bylaw will manage cash in lieu contributions from eligible Class 2 and Class 3 permits to ensure funds are used for their intended purpose over the long term and to direct a portion of all funds to climate initiatives that implement the Climate Change Action Plan 2.0. So what comes next? Implementing the community planning permit bylaw will require updates to internal processes, application intake procedures, as well as public notice procedures. Planning staff are already preparing for this transition, and should council approve the bylaw, training will be provided to city staff, the development community, all partnered agencies, as well as William Trudee's First Nations. Public education will be supported by online user guides, as well as an expanded frontline customer service approach that will make planning staff readily available to answer in-person and virtual inquiries. It's incredibly important to note that the final community planning permit bylaw is intended to be a living document. Staff will continue to monitor its performance, identify opportunities for improvement, and make recommendations for change as needed. Staff are committed to report back to council in 1 year with an update on implementation, key performance indicators, lessons learned, and any recommendations for refinement. I will now turn over the presentation to Justine Giannicola, partner at Dillon Consulting, who will close out with a summary of the benefits of adopting a community planning permit system.
Thank you, Megan. So the bylaw marks a fundamental shift in the way development is regulated and experienced by those who interact with the city and these services. If I start with the perspective from the applicants, the process will be more flexible, consistent, and provides clarity on what is required as part of development, where there's flexibility to be accommodated to address unique site characteristics. The process will be faster for those who are looking to implement the city's official plan policies and work within the rules of development that you've established through a single review and approval process. For those looking to utilize additional height or density permitted within priority areas of the city, the community planning permit system establishes modernized regulations and sets clear requirements on what is needed to support development. From the perspective of council and community members, the majority of changes highlighted in how the bylaw embeds community priorities directly in where it permits development in alignment with the official plan. It incentivizes community benefits such as affordable housing, parkland, and sustainable development in exchange for building heights in priority areas of the city. It provides a framework that allows staff to utilize their expertise, professionalism, competence, and technical knowledge to administer the development approvals process. And might I add that we've had an experience with your staff through this process. You've got exceptional staff, and I've observed their attention to detail, diligence, care, the ethical practice, and how they focused on meaningful engagement, real solutions-based approach to preparing this bylaw. They now have the framework to work within the parameters you've established and allow council to focus council time on the highest value, most strategic priorities of the community. Like many communities across Canada, Peterborough is getting ready for significant demographic and lifestyle shifts of its population. The community planning permit bylaw reflects the diverse nature of our communities, balancing growth in priority areas with the need for complete and well-serviced communities. As municipalities are tasked to do more with less, the city has defined a made in Peterborough approach to regulating development that will serve community builders, staff, council, and community members for decades to come. This new approach to regulate development supports the shift towards intensification as we prepare for the transition of historic lower density built forms to more complete communities that support higher density and proximity to transit, more affordable and broader choices in housing, and walkable neighborhoods with amenities, parks, and open spaces close by. City staff have demonstrated exemplary leadership in the development of this community planning permit bylaw, and the city has achieved unprecedented levels of community engagement. It's now very well positioned to initiate implementation, to start applying the tool, track progress, and take proactive steps in making adjustments needed to realize the intended outcomes. Our consulting team is honored to have been part of this project, this tremendous milestone for Peterborough, and we congratulate the city on taking this forward citywide. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you to all of you for your presentation and all your hard work. So we do have some questions of the presenters, Councillor Chica and Councillor Reel. Councillor Chica.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair Beamer, I'd like to thank all of the presenters. It's great to see you again, Justine and Ms. Kimball, and all of the planning staff that have worked so diligently well over this year to take us through this process. And thank you also for meeting this week and having conversations around some of the changes that have been developed and that you've distilled into the slides. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you. I know there has been a lot on the front burner in terms of legislation, and a part of our discussion this week after the changes were posted on the website, we had some opportunity to talk about it. But now that we're all together with the public, could you speak to how we have shaped this? We met for the review on April 25th. At that time, there was a motion that was unanimously passed that voluntary green development standards be embedded within the CPPS bylaw proper. We're seeing, and you shared on the slide, that there's some reference in facility and services, that separate bylaw, the three separate bylaws that we hadn't ever seen before it came to us in our agenda. There's nothing that really defines what sustainable or enhanced or voluntary best practices are. What are the green development standards? That was what the motion that was unanimously passed was seeking, that somewhere in the CPPS, voluntary best practices, green development standards would be identified for builders, for developers, for people who are wanting to implement that. And the legislation, the language in the legislation says that we're no longer permitted to impose mandatory enhanced development standards, but they are now voluntary for developers. That is the language in Ontario.ca since June 2nd when it reached royal assent. So it speaks to having voluntary standards, sustainability standards for building within our bylaws for zoning. So my question to you is, why is it absent within the CPPS proper that for class 2 approve and 3 approvals that which is what we requested, that isn't spelled out somewhere, what they look like, what developers could do? Why isn't it in there? And it's only in a separate bylaw that we hadn't seen before tonight. The language in that the ministry is using is voluntary standards that we could use and builders could choose, but it doesn't exist in our bylaw. Can you explain that? We talked about it this week, but for the public. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Chica, and through the chair. Essentially, so the province has passed legislation through Bill 98 that indicates to municipalities that it can no longer require a condition of approval based on green development standards. So green development standards are not permitted to be affected as a condition of approval of a planning approval under the Act. And that includes a community planning permit, the issuance of a community planning permit bylaw. So although, as you're describing, a developer could, volunteer to incorporate those, if it is in exchange for building height, the only way to affect that is to enter into an agreement with the developer. And as a condition of that agreement and as a condition of the approval of the CPP permit, we would be requiring them to make good on their promise to voluntarily incorporate green development standards. That is inherently a condition of approval in the fact that it would become a condition of the actual permit, and it would become a condition of an agreement that we would be asking the developer to enter into with the city. And so it flies in the face of provincial legislation. Council is not able to pass a bylaw that imposes conditions that are contrary to the Planning Act. And it's also no longer permissible as a requirement under the Building Code Act either. So as an alternative, the Facility Services and Matters Reserve Bylaw has been put together. It will manage the funds that we collect in lieu of facility services and matters in both Class 2 and a Class 3 scenario. There are options for that collection under the bylaw. And Council has the authority to use those funds to support incentive programs to encourage the incorporation of green development standards within developments within the community. Thank you. And just supplemental, if I may. Thank you. I look forward to sharing some things later when we have some debate in terms of some amendments that may help get us closer to what Council requested in that review meeting. However, I just wanted to ask finally, there are municipalities that do have voluntary green development standards that have very recently been passed and as part of their zoning legislation, as in Carleton Place. So how can we justify if there's new legislation that's been passed? How is it permissible? And the language in the legislation appears to support the not mandatory any longer, but voluntary. There's a bit of a conundrum here, and we know that municipalities out there have passed, their councils have passed voluntary green development standards very recently. And even though Bill 98 is in effect, they will continue to have their voluntary green development standards present within their zoning legislation. Can you speak to that, please?
Through the chair, Carlton Place Community Planning Permit Bylaw was prepared, I believe it was 2007, 2008, quite a bit earlier than this most recent Bill 98. I'm not fully familiar with all the details of their bylaw, but we do sit with their planning director on a community planning permit advisory committee on behalf of the Ontario Professional Planning Institute. And they are having to look at how to deal with the most recent legislation given the bylaw that they have in effect. So I can't speak to how they will be modifying or adjusting things, but it was before Bill 98, and I understand it is actively being considered in terms of the legislative requirements and how this tool functions.
Thank you. And it sounds like it was in 2025, but based on my research that it was finalized at Carlton Place. But I guess together we will look at ways of massaging this so that it aligns with the language of the legislation that does use voluntary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chica. Councillor Reel and Duguay, questions of the presenters. Councillor Reel.
Through the chair to Ms. Kimball, I'm still unclear about Lansdowne Street East with what I'm reading is that staff wants on an ad hoc basis to bring forward plans for residential on the southeast side of Lansdowne Street when a company won a court battle in this regard at the OLT for industrial and commercial. So when I'm looking at what was presented to me, there was a picture of residential along Lansdowne Street East on the south side of that street. When, like I said, there was a court case won when there was a residential that tried to go in there, and certainly they won at the OLT. So I'm mystified. Can you shed some light on this? Because it says that staff really still wants the ability to, at an ad hoc basis, have residential go on the streets there, at that side of the street.
To Councillor Riel through the chair, the decision, the OLT decision, I think which is what you're referring to regarding the path appeal, it relates to a very specific test that was discussed throughout that decision and throughout the hearing, and it boiled down to the understanding or the description of the proposed use being an institutional use versus a residential use, and how it was assessed by a land use compatibility study. And although the decision indicated that it was not the residential, it was decided that it was a residential use versus an institutional use, and that it was the mitigative measures that were being proposed by the land use compatibility experts who provided evidence at that hearing. They sided with the evidence of the industry, indicating that there wasn't sufficient mitigative measures in place to ensure appropriate compatibility between that residential use and the general employment uses in behind. It does not give direction to the city to amend its official plan. It does not give direction to remove the sensitive land uses. Quite the contrary. The provincial policy statement and together with our official plan, which was approved by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing in accordance with current policies, indicate that there is opportunity for compatibility between sensitive land uses, including residential, and general employment, which exists in behind. That is always subject to a compatibility study, which could include environmental studies like noise studies, gas, fumes, odor, things like that. So there are scientific studies that have to be conducted in order to ensure compatibility between major facilities and sensitive land uses. And what we're proposing in the bylaw here is that where our official plan contemplates major mixed-use corridor, which includes residential, sensitive land uses, and commercial uses, where it abuts against general employment, that we use the provincial influence areas to ensure that there is, or first of all, to require a land use compatibility study. The bylaw contemplates that in all instances where a land use compatibility study is required, that that CPP permit in that instance has to come through a Class 3 permit process, which means council approval. So it's not, staff are not authorized to approve those permits. That will allow for a public opportunity to provide comments and concerns to council, as well as through the major facilities. And furthermore, the bylaw, actually, we've incorporated a provision that so we've been working with the major facilities in that area, south of Lansdowne Street east of Ashburnham. And we have agreed that they will be included in the future conversation and the refinement of a terms of reference for that land use compatibility study. So they have provided lots of good suggestions as to what should be included in that study, as well as, who should be qualified to prepare those studies and those types of things. So those are all being worked out. We've made a commitment to the major facilities there to include them in the refinement of those terms of reference. And until the time that we have those terms of reference approved, we are suggesting that we put a pause on approving any sensitive land use like residential in that area. Our commitment to you through the recommendations of the report are that those terms of reference and that work will be completed by the end of this year.
Chair, my second question is, I see nothing in here about limiting the building height in East City. That I put that in comments on the CPPS, and I don't see anything in the report on the height restriction in East City.
To Councillor Riel through the chair, there are building height limits in East City. They do follow the consultation process. We did have extensive consultation on what those should be. So there is both there's a Class 1, a Class 2, and a Class 3 height limit. I believe, depending on where you are in East City, if you're talking about Hunter Street East, I think it's 8 stories as a Class 2, and then it goes up to 10, I believe, in a Class 3. Sorry, 15 stories. So maybe it's 10 to 15. Yeah, 10 to 15 on Hunter Street East, and then it's a little lower as you go further south of that corridor. So there is a Class 3 limit now imposed on Hunter Street East and within the Class 3 permit parameters under the bylaw, which is approximately 5 stories higher than a Class 2 limit as expressed through the bylaw.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Riel. I have Councillor Degay, Mayor Leo, Councillor Vassiadis, and Councillor Burke. 2 questions. Councillor Degay.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. To all of our presenters, thank you for it was a very fulsome and succinct presentation. My questions are simple, Mr. Chairman. Does the proposed community planning permit system, is it consistent with the 2024 provincial planning statement? That's my first question.
Through you, Chair, yes.
Thank you. My second question, is the proposed community planning permit system in conformity with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing approved Cities of 2023 official plan?
I would suggest that it is, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gay. Mayor Leal.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Just my first question deals with that southern part of Lansdowne Street from Ashburnham to Living Hope Church. If because he's referenced in the background material of our report under comments, narrative, etc., through you, Mr. Chair, if Don Dyke came forward tomorrow to our planning department and he wanted to extend Kingdon Lumber to build a facility similar to what he built just outside of Lakeville, how under this would that application be facilitated?
Through you, Chair, to Mayor Leal. That property is actually partially situated within the major mixed-use corridor, and the rear portion of the property is actually in the general employment precinct. So it shares 2 precincts. It would facilitate, both precincts, in fact, would facilitate the expansion of that business. The expansion will, because it's non-residential, would be permitted to be a single-story building. So there are provisions in the bylaw that provide some flexibility for non-residential uses along the major mixed-use corridor, allowing for single-story, and it would essentially facilitate what they were contemplated several years ago.
If I could continue, Mr. Chair, what are the reasons that came out of the Mayor's Task Force on Housing to move to this system? Certainly advocated, talked about, because it was background by Councillor Duguay, was to speed up these kind of approvals to get these opportunities developed as quickly as possible. So that's the thrust here, right?
Through you, Chair, to Mayor Leal, yes. This process would expedite that approval in that it would facilitate any variances that they would require with respect to building height, for example, any approvals that they would require normally under site plan approval. It's all included in one process and legislated to be approved within 45 days from the date of a complete application. So it's definitely an expedited approvals process.
Okay.
Do I have one more question, Mr.
No, but well, you can ask another question in debate and discussion if you want.
Terrific. Thank you.
Perfect. So I have Councillor Vasiliadis and Burke for questions. Councillor Vasiliadis.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I'm looking at the pre-consultation process and how that's changed. I just want some clarity on it. It says the proposed pre-consultation bylaw will be repealed and replaced by the city's existing mandatory pre-consultation, and it says it will impose a mandatory pre-consultation requirement for the CPP applications, but it will also give the Director of Planning the authority to exempt an applicant from the mandatory pre-consultation at their discretion. So can you give me an example of the Director of Planning, or why the Director of Planning would exempt an applicant from the mandatory pre-consultation?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Vasiliadis. Through the chair, an example would be an instance where it's considered to be a minor application and it doesn't require the same level of approval or review from a staff perspective, from agency and departmental perspectives. So it may be equivalent to something that would be considered today through Committee of Adjustment as a minor variance. That would be an example of an instance where we would want the applicant, of course, to come and have a chat with us, but planning staff could probably handle, quite easily setting out the terms and the conditions for a complete application versus, commencing a formal pre-consultation meeting with several agencies and departments.
That's great. So to hurry up
Yeah.
the process, I like that.
Yes.
So I know that application processes have gone through a 90-day process, and now it's down to a 45-day process. So I'm just curious to know how staff will meet those timelines and get to the council in time.
Thank you for the question again, Councillor Vasiliadis. It's going to be tricky for a Class 3 permit, to be honest. We are in discussions with the Clerk's Department and with senior leadership team about potentially modifying the report deadline requirements because, as you're likely familiar, most of our reports are due almost 40 days before the actual meeting commences, and so there will have to be some latitude in that. And coming with this new system is a significant change management process for not just planning staff, but building staff, engineering staff, and so on. So we are in the throes of actually creating an implementation process that will facilitate that occurrence. It may transpire into, special council meetings or meetings of a special committee to deal with CPP permits, with the Class 3 permits. But at this point, we're still sort of working those kinks out. But certainly, it is going to be a challenge, but we're up for it. We got this far, and I think that we're in a good spot to make sure that happens.
That's great. Keep going. That's great. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Vasiliadis. Councillor Burke.
Chair Beamer, thank you, and through you to Ms. Kimball, thank you so much. I hope you know how much I appreciate and I see the effort that's been put into this, and I do appreciate that. I have a couple of questions. I probably have more than I'm allowed, so I'll stick to what I'm allowed. But I'm trying to figure out, and just quickly too, that one of the presenters talked about customer service, and I think that's hugely important. Not only just to check a box, but I think my constituents that I talk to, they just want to be able to pick up the phone and talk to someone that knows this and not play this game of perpetual telephone tag. That's important. The bylaw and the part that I'm struggling to understand is the use of the natural areas overlay within the CPP. Concerns were raised to me that the mapping is incomplete and that the official plan natural areas are not all mapped as environmentally protected. So are we comfortable moving ahead with that being the caveat without having those key natural heritage protections or having those key natural heritage protections dependent upon future interpretations rather than being clearly defined and mapped out today?
So the natural areas overlay is exactly as it appears in the official plan. It was an approach to natural heritage features with respect to development applications. It's been vetted through the province. There is, I would suggest, nothing wrong with that approach. I think what you're suggesting is that, there may be areas that are identified as natural areas that should transpire into an environmental protection precinct, whereas maybe in today's version of the bylaw, they're in an open space precinct. But that is consistent with the policy direction of the official plan. The official plan allows for a landowner to come forward with a development application. If those lands are within an area identified as natural areas on our natural areas overlay in the official plan, it will trigger the need for an evaluation of that natural feature. And so once those evaluations are complete, there is also opportunity for peer review of those studies. And then similar to the land use compatibility study, we are actually working on a terms of reference for the environmental impact studies And we are going to incorporate within those studies the study requirements, requirements for mapping and data that so once an area, a natural area is evaluated, essentially, it will be mapped, and then periodically there will be an amendment to the CPP bylaw to incorporate and to transfer those lands into an environmental protection precinct. It will then prevent development from occurring within that evaluated feature.
Thanks. The example that came up to me from a lot of residents and users was the Activity Haven site. Historically was zoned institutional, but they do have an open park space there that's used. It's not an institution in the sort of like historical sense anymore. So that was one of the differences of how it looks like on our side of the street versus what it actually functions as in the community. I'll go to my second question. Thank you for answering that. There are some weird sort of anomalies that I'm looking at for the center of Peterborough. It's on page 250, and that's the class 3 max building heights. So there's just the big space I understand because I raised that at the last meeting, but there's like a little space to the north and a little space to the east, tiny little lot that's blue. And I'm interpreting this from the legend as this has no height limit. Can you just explain these little tiny properties with no height limit that are in residential areas? It's 250. It's the class 3 max for downtown.
Sorry, we're struggling a bit here. We don't have a copy of the agenda printed out, so we're looking through the bylaw to correlate with the schedule that you're looking at. Thank you.
There's a tiny little property. There's a tiny little site on the north, and there's a tiny little site on the east in East City.
Hit the circles on this. Sorry, Councillor Birk, are you referring to the Sophia Street property? Is that
I can't for the life of me. I see that it's on the east side of the map I'm looking at. I can't read the streets. Yeah.
You have it circled on this? Okay. Okay, yeah. So that particular property is actually a general employment precinct. It's a longstanding permission for those lands. So they were used for industrial purposes in the past. And yes, there is a bit of an anomaly from a maximum building height perspective in that instance. And yeah, there is a class 2 building height of 8 stories. Yeah. So, and then there is no class 3 limit. So in that instance, council would have the ability through a class 3 permit to permit an unlimited height on those two properties.
You mentioned the Sophia Street site.
Yeah.
There was another one to the north. I'm just looking for like your explanation.
Off of London
was
Street.
fine.
Right?
Just there's 3 blue
Yes.
squares.
Yeah. So all of those blue you're correct in your interpretation that there is no class 3 limit. It doesn't mean that council cannot impose a limit on the building height through a class 3 permit. It could be refused if it's unreasonable.
Is that blue the bigger site? Is that trail? My question is why are these sites different than the surrounding neighborhoods? That's what I'm trying to ask. And I think that's Trail College that I'm looking at off of London Street.
North of London. Major institutional, sorry.
Okay, so I think we got an answer that it would come to council.
The larger piece between Albert and Monaghan is GE, of course. And then the other portion is probably institutional Trail College.
Yeah. Any further questions? Ms. Kimball, thank you, and
You're
to your team for all your hard work on this over the past year plus.
Thank you.
Well
My
done.
pleasure.
Okay, so we have some recommendations in front of us. A to L, Councillor Chica.
Thank you very much. And again, to the team for entertaining all of our questions and engaging us in good conversation about this. I would like to move this list of recommendations. However, I do have I have an amendment that is fivefold, and unfortunately, we can't screen it, I guess. Can we?
Okay, let's try. Are we able to screen it? 'Cause that would be amazing if we could. And then we'll try to push out a vote on eScribe and see what happens. But I think we can, Councillor Chica, so you can read it or not. It's up to you.
Okay, I will read it. I'll read it dramatically so it isn't boring. um, uh, these are things that, from discussions with staff and with our environment partners, there were things in the last couple of days that have come up. When we put heads together, sometimes there are gaps that maybe we can see looking at it from our different angles. So these are things that actually, for the most part, will be after the bylaw is in place, that staff will do the following or endeavor to do the following. So here's the first one, that the bylaw to establish reserve funds to regulate the use of monies collected as cash in lieu of in-kind facility services and matters, when imposed as a condition of approval for Class 2 or Class 3 community planning permits be approved, as attached as Appendix B to this report with Section 3.2 amended to allocate 50% of the obligatory reserve fund to affordable housing and 50% to climate change action plan 2.0 and park conservation or outdoor public recreational purposes. I'll speak to it briefly after I've read them all. The next one, that council directs staff to provide an information report to council outlining lessons learned, monitoring and use of environmental impact studies, and any recommended implementation changes after 1 year of the CPP bylaw coming into effect. The next one, that voluntary green development standards be referenced within an additional checklist developed to accompany the CPPS bylaw in order to present best practices available for consideration by all builders, developers, home purchasers, and renters. So that would be as a separate item to the CPPS because of the things that we discussed earlier. That staff expedite development of a community improvement plan, a CIP, for green development standards and council approved application of the Climate Change Action Plan 2.0 and report back to council on progress by Q1 in 2027. And finally, that staff expedite a field verification, mapping, monitoring, and designation process for updating the most important natural areas, including woodlands and wetlands, with a report back to council by Q1 of 2027. So those are the amendments, and I shared them with council as soon as I had them compiled, and staff is aware of what they are. Essentially, we have a few gaps. We haven't done all the mapping as we just discussed in the question and answer area. But what we can do is address the mapping gaps, and we can have voluntary incentives through a CIP. And Director Appleby, we talked about a CIP, which is a separate thing that the city has to nudge certain things. And we have CIPs funding, a series of funding programs for a variety of things. It's really a separate program that's put in place, not part of the CPPS. It's what we're intending to do. It's a typical planning tool, and it incentivizes. It's a way to incentivize to developers to do the right thing. The CPPS isn't the only tool to achieve the requirements of the official plan. So this would be a wonderful accompaniment to the CPPS, and it would be a way for us to provide those voluntary standards so that builders can even see what they are. What are the best practices? And, there's a question, money. How much is this going to cost? Will this be a part of the budget? Next steps over the next year would require some budget to support these things. So it would be a soft pre-commitment, but it strengthens a case at budget time for allocating some funds to these things. And some of the funds will come from Class 2 and Class 3 approvals. There's that source. Another reason for suggesting that the mandatory fund is 50% for affordable housing, still a huge priority, and 50% for parks and climate change would be to provide more of a pot for those things that have not been implemented to date. Because they're outstanding, and it is a bit of a gap. So we're still prioritizing first and foremost the affordable housing.
Councillor Chico, would you like your second 5?
Yes, please. But we're not forgetting about the sustainable incentives and the parkland issue. We haven't done all the mapping for the natural areas. We haven't done it all yet. It needs to be done. So if we do it this year with these recommendations, these extra recommendations, then in a year when it comes up for review, we'll be ready to go because we've already put these things into play. So I encourage you to support these. If we need to split them up, we can split them up. But groups can work together if final wording needs to be adjusted. But I highly recommend, this is such a big deal for us to go forward. We already have a list. Let's just tweak it by adding these few. Thank you, colleagues, for considering it. I urge you to support.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chico. So Councillor Chico moved the main motion and then brought forward some amendments. So we're speaking and voting on the 4 or 5 amendments. As there is our new procedural bylaw, we'll just ask staff just their thoughts and changes or ramifications, pro or con to this. So whoever wants to just make some comments on these amendments. We're unable to get them up on screen, so sorry, everyone.
Through the chair, I appreciate the opportunity to consider some of these in terms of a motion providing additional direction to staff following sort of approval of this CPP bylaw, not necessarily being worked into the CPP bylaw at this moment in time, but allowing staff opportunity to kind of work on this over a period of time and report back to council. There is, as Ms. Kimball noted, a recommendation already in there, and it's kind of touched on in this motion that staff is committing to come back at the 1-year mark of the CPP being in effect. And that would, in my mind, certainly be a great opportunity to come back on a number of these items and report back. Some of the things that are in the motion, we'll need some time to kind of sort out what's the best way to make it happen, or is it feasible to make it happen, right? What are the budget implications and whatnot, and allowing us some time to kind of look into that and report back is much appreciated.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So speaking to the amendments, Councillor Duguay to the amendment.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. To the motion, I would appreciate being able to vote on the five recommended supplementary components separately.
Separately, sure.
I want to speak in order that it reads the staff expedited field verification, mapping, monitoring, and designation process for updating the most important natural areas, woodlands, wetlands, and report back to council Q1 of 2027. Just to put in perspective, in the county of Peterborough, they have 2 important, and they will continue to have 2 important map overlays in their official plan. One will be aggregate and the other will be natural areas. So in the instance, colleagues, when a property owner has something as fundamental as wanting to sever a property And if it's noted on the county's map overlay that there's a natural feature or aggregate area, that property is obliged to carry out studies to delineate and determine if in fact the feature is significant and worth protecting. Now, the cost to carry out a study of that limited nature can range somewhere between $2,500 to $50,000. Depends on the complexity of the feature. Moreover, some of the studies from an environmental perspective pursuant to provincial legislation require 4 seasons to carry out the work. And you have to have ecologists, you have to have biologists, and there's some of the lands that would be involved in in this city are privately owned by the Conservation Authority, institutions. I would suggest to you the reality of reporting back in Q1 2027 is not remotely feasible. That's item O. Secondly, I'm very concerned about the cost implication to the municipality. Whereas what staff have said through the community planning permit system, it would be incumbent upon a developer to carry out the requisite studies to the satisfaction of the city, to the satisfaction of stakeholder agencies to verify if a development in proximity to a natural area or that might have a natural area overlay is in fact relevant. That's the appropriate mechanism, not requiring the city to do the work. This would be a considerable task, and it would be very, very expensive to the municipality. Where the model we're proposing, it would be developers that would carry out the studies, and accordingly our maps would be updated. But what's important is the map overlays prescribed in our official plan do not go away. They remain applicable. They'll continue to govern and protect those lands. So that I would prefer to be able to speak to. I also want to speak to, Mr. Chairman, I'm cognizant of time. The item, it's referenced as item H, and a redistribution of the monies that are being set aside by Class 2 or Class 3 community planning permit approvals. And that would be Appendix B to a report 26-030. The recommendation is to reduce the proposed reserve fund to affordable housing from 75% to 50%. I will not support that direction. Affordable housing is an absolute priority in our community. It's my belief that the reserve fund that could be paid for through development, responsible development of property, could in turn be made available to affordable housing, and quite conceivably could be available to assist the Peterborough Housing Corporation and other nonprofits deliver affordable housing in our marketplace. This was established through the community consultation process as being the first priority. The second was in parks and parks related. I would not be prepared to support any reduction in the reserve fund to affordable housing, and I would be supportive of maintaining the formula as prescribed on page 10 of the staff report. Those are my comments for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Degay. Any further comments to the amendments? The amendments, Councillor Burke? The amendments?
Yeah, Chair Beamer, through you to my council colleague who I love more than anything. I think what I'm trying to do here is I want to support the idea in the first part of the motion, which is that let's set aside specifically some funding that's going towards the Climate Action Plan 2.0 parks conservation outdoor public rec purposes. I really buy that, and I think that I would support seeing some of those facility services and matters funds being dedicated specifically to that. But I do have trouble supporting it based on our need for affordable housing. I was appreciative that 75% was going to affordable housing. I would probably more easily support a model that kept that 75% and then enshrined a specific set of monies for the environment within the 25%. So if you have a chance to speak, and if you're open to sort of like making that part of the motion more flexible, I think I could get behind the whole thing better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Any further comments or questions on the amendment? Okay, so again, sorry everyone, our system's down today. So I'll read each one and then we'll take a manual vote. So the first one, I guess, is H, that the bylaw be that the bylaw to establish reserve funds to regulate the use of monies collected as cash in lieu of in-kind facility services in matters when imposed as a condition of approval for Class 2 or Class 3 community planning permits be approved as attached as Appendix B to reports blah, blah, blah. The section 3.2 amendment to allocate 50% of the obligatory reserve fund to affordable housing and 50% to climate change action plan 2.0 in park conservation and outdoor public recreational purposes. So we'll take a vote on, moved by Councillor Chica, we'll take a vote on that. We're in the voting, yeah, we're in the voting. Take your time. Is your votes coming up in eScribe? Okay, so if you can vote, vote accordingly, and then the ones who can't, we'll just ask you respectfully. A nay.
On just H, correct? No.
Yes.
Councillor Parnell?
Point of order, if I may. Sorry, this is a technicality. The letter is actually M. It was an error because the list from the report goes up to L, and then it should be MNOP. So just so that you know that the lettering is off. Thank you.
No, thank you.
No.
Okay, we'll cast that vote.
We're just waiting on Councillor Parnell. Councillor Parnell, are you a yes or a no on item H?
Right, we'll assume she's away for now. Right, so that is lost. Right, so the next item, N. No, not right now. Okay, so the next one we'll be voting on, I guess N, that council directs staff to provide an information report to council outlining lessons learned, monitoring and use of environmental impact studies, and any recommended implementation changes after 1 year of the CPP bylaw coming into effect. Moved by Councillor Chica, we'll take a vote. Yay.
Yes.
Madam Clerk, could you just read it without having any paperwork in front of me? It's exceedingly difficult. So could you just read this again for me, please?
That council directs staff to provide an information report to council outlining lessons learned, monitoring and use of environmental impact studies, and any recommended implemental changes after 1 year of the CPP bylaw coming into effect.
Yes.
Right, that is carried. The next one, I guess it's O. That voluntary green development standards be referenced within and an additional checklist developed to accompany the CPPS bylaw in order to present best practices available for consideration to all builders, developers, home purchasers, and renters. Moved by Councillor Lucica, we'll take a vote. Nay.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is carried. So the next one. That's P. That staff expedite development of a community improvement plan for green development standards and council approved application of the climate change action plan 2.0 and report back to council on progress by Q1 in 2027. Moved by Councilor Chico. Will take a vote. I think everyone's on but me, so which is great. So Leo, your name. But thank you. And that is carried. And the last one, don't know what letter we're at. Q. That staff expedite a field verification, mapping, monitoring, and designation process for updating the most important natural areas, including woodlands and wetlands, and report back to Council Q1 of 2027. We'll take a vote. Moved by Councilor Chica. We'll take a vote. Pass. And that carries. So we're now at the amended main motion, Councilor Chica. Essentially, they all passed except the first one, so 4 of 5. So that's what we're voting on now, the main motion. So speaking to the main motion, Councilor Burke for a second time, and Councilor Reel for a first time. Councilor Burke, second time.
I think I didn't speak. The Chica was the first speaker with the amendment. Thank you. So I'd like to move an amendment that I submitted to John Kennedy, that staff be directed to provide quarterly public reports during the first year of implementation of the community planning permit system, including a summary of all Class 2 and Class 3 applications received and approved, variations granted, building heights approved, facilities, services, and matters secured, cash in lieu contributions collected, and any issues identified through the implementation. It's just my personal take. I feel that as we heard from staff, Ms. Kimball, that there will be some things to sort of iron out as we get this live in the community. And I think it would benefit this council or the incoming council to have, much like we have quarterly financial updates, to just have a very brief summary of how the program is functioning for people, because we're going to hear it either way, right? So this just will solidify it quarterly to come to council with those things. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Councilor Burke. So moved by Councilor Burke. Amendment, comments, or questions? All right, we'll take a vote. I don't think we can get it up. Sorry, guys. So, yep. Thanks, Councilor Baldwin. Sure. So, Director Appleby, did you want to make any comments on that amendment?
Mr. Chair, thank you. It can be done. I'm going to suggest it will be a bit tricky just because it's a, kind of a continuous staff kind of requirement and giving our reporting schedules through to council. So it will certainly, take up some staff effort to be able to do that. But It can be done. We are already under obligation to report to the province quarterly, I think, on a different system of metrics in terms of approvals and sort of units in the system and going through the system. So we already do that. This is going to be kind of a different layer to that. But if it's council's will, it can be done.
Okay, any comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Burke, and we're working on getting it up before we vote on it. So we'll just give staff a time. And again, thanks staff for all your work tonight on a challenging evening.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. I've had some connection issues. It's Councillor Parnell.
Hello,
Could we
yeah.
maybe, I'm sorry, could we perhaps do this maybe every 6 months? Because this is a brand new program. Staff are already stressed, and there's a lot going on. So I think quarterly immediately is a bit much to ask.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burke for a second time.
I'm fine to change it to every 6 months. I appreciate staff's response. To me, it's neither here nor there. If they're compiling the information for the government reporting, I think it should be a straightforward thing. I'm not asking for 50 pages. I'm just asking for more regular of an update. Twice a year is fine. Quarterly is fine. I can change it officially if you allow me to, if that's allowed.
Do I have that much power?
Well, I mean,
Yes.
I don't know. If
Yes,
I'm
you can
allowed to amend it, then
of course, yes.
yeah, I'll amend it to by every 6 months, twice a year,
Perfect. I think that'll get you the votes. So
twice a year, biannually.
biannually.
Thank you.
Every
Thank you,
6 months.
Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Thank you, Councillor Purnell.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take a vote, and if e-scribe and whoever can't, we'll ask you manually. So moved by Councillor Burke, we'll take a vote. I'm a yay.
Mr. Chair, my vote's not coming up, but I'm a yay.
Okay, Councillor Purnell's a yay. Is there anyone else we're waiting for? Okay, I assume, did that carry? Carried. And that is carried. Thank you, Councillor Burke. So back to the amended main motion with Councillor Chica's changes and Councillor Burke's change. Speaking to the amended main motion, Councillor Real.
Through the chair to Director Appleby, I'm still hearing from builders and developers that the planning system is slow, expensive, and convoluted. An example, once a planner okays the plan and they are taken off the file and a new one is put on the file, process starts all over again. How will the CPPS process change all of this? And this is what I'm hearing from builders and developers.
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Rial. It's an excellent question. So this process will it completely fundamentally changes the whole planning approvals process. So in the past, because our zoning bylaw was so dated, folks would come in, they would seek a zoning bylaw amendment, and one planner would deal with that. They do a review process, and then that would get closed up, and then they'd have to start a new process, a site plan approval. And a different planner would handle that, do through a review, enter into agreements, then they can move on to get their building permit after they conclude that. Under this process, we've kind of taken those processes and put them together. So we're fundamentally updating the zoning bylaw right now by implementing this bylaw. They're going to be called precincts, but we've kind of upped the ante, if you will, in terms of what people are able to do on their property to settle sort of that land use question. And we're taking now the development approval side of that, which is the site plan side, and rolling it in. And so when someone comes in to do a development, they're seeking a development or a community planning permit. There's going to be a 45-day process essentially for them to come in, initiate their permit request, review the site plan details, and then issue a decision. So it will be one planner shepherding that process through, with the help of other staff internally. An applicant's not going to have to bounce from one planner for one process to another planner after, because it's only going to be one process now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hill. Good question. Councillor DeGay, amended main motion.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. To my colleagues, my earlier queries made of the planning consultant and Caroline Kimball. Fundamentally, the CPPS has to demonstrate consistency with the 2024 provincial planning statement. If it doesn't, it can't be approved. It also has to demonstrate that it's in conformity with our city's official plan, what it does. I have considered the process, and like many of you and many of our public, attended as many of the workshops, sessions, meetings as possible. The consultation process that has led to the formation and writing of the CPPS is considerable, and I think it sets a benchmark for other communities across Ontario to follow. It's been meaningful. We have 200 and some pages of comments. Staff have taken time to listen to those comments. Staff have taken time to listen to our comments and queries. I had opportunity to, and I referenced Risa, had opportunity to attend a workshop in Windsor where their Commissioner of Development Planning Services and other senior staff were asking about, inquiring about our community planning permit system. So in the city of Windsor, as an example, my home community, not meaning to disparage my home community, but in their community, if somebody on a main street wants to create a large lot, wanted to put in a 4-unit dwelling, they have to go through a zoning process and a site plan approval process. And that will probably take them 1.5 years to secure approval. In this city, first of all, in that context, the 4 units is generally permitted as of right, subject to certain regulations. But our process would take, as Mr. Appleby's indicated, would take 2 previous separate processes, combine them as one, establish and also establish through pre-consultation clarity on what studies are required, the permits made, and then ultimately a decision can be made. I'm also very satisfied that the types of class 3 applications that will require our attention, that's firmly established. I believe it includes properties that are designated. It includes, as we heard this evening, lands that are in proximity to major employment uses. We've also heard that it would contemplate, for example, large developments within our major mixed-use residential corridor. So, Mr. Chairman, with all this in mind, this is a very, very bold planning step, but it is a necessary planning step. And if we wish to move forward with efficient and effective development that can be approved in a timely manner, to Councillor Riel's point, that developers and builders have consistency and predictability in the process, this is the model that should be employed. With that in mind, I am in support of the motion as prepared, the bylaw as written, and including the recent amendments arrived at in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor DeGay. Amended main motion of Mayor Leal and Councillor Chica. Mayor Leal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I do believe I'm on pretty solid ground when I say that we are the first middle-sized city in the province of Ontario to adopt a CPP. And the timing is perfect. We're replacing a comprehensive zoning bylaw that was first put in place in 1972. It is 54 years old. And over that period of time, it has been amended so many times that it's now an 800-page document, just because of what has transpired over those 54 years. I'll just make 7 points where I think the strength of the CPP. First of all, it will allow us to build a new housing ladder with emphasis on our strategic growth areas in the city of Peterborough. Number two, it will provide clarity for the development housing industry. And over the last 2 months, I've been spending a lot of time with the development industry and the housing industry when we contemplated reducing development charges from 50% in the city of Peterborough. Number three, it will continue to unlock the missing middle for housing in the city of Peterborough. Every report that we have to date talks about the missing middle and the greatest opportunity to address one of the elements of housing affordability. Number four, it will help to reduce systemic barriers to home ownership and housing affordability in the city of Peterborough. Number five, there will be a provision for community benefits for additional supply. Essentially, Mr. Chair, what we're faced with today, we have two aspects of it. We have market housing and we have non-market housing. And the 75% reserve that will be created will allow us to make continuing transfers to entities like Peterborough Housing Corporation, to the Mount, and other nonprofit entities that I think are the key vehicles to build affordable housing. The CPP will allow the marketplace and developers to do what they do best, and that's build. And the more we build in this community, the better off we're going to be, because it creates that inventory, which moderates rental rates and housing rates here in the city of Peterborough. Number six, it will allow us to maximize return on existing infrastructure in our community. We know how much per meter a sewer pipe costs, a water pipe costs, and we know the cost of greenfield development. So CPP will allow us to maximize all the infrastructure we already have in place. And number seven, it will also allow us to maximize every dollar available that we can get from our half funding. And interesting enough, I chat with a lot of young Peterboroughians, and we do know that in the spring of 2026, the unemployment rate for 15 to 24-year-olds in Canada was 13.8%. That's double the national average. And for those of us that are interested in reading the World Happiness Report, which is a very interesting document, it ranks Canada 25 in the world. But when it comes to young people in Canada between 18 and 25, that ranking is 71% in terms of happiness. And what is the key issue? Affordability. The next issue, affordability. And the next issue after that, affordability. I think we have an obligation, Mr. Chair, through the CPP, to give these 18 to 25-year-olds a real chance. I haven't had to worry about paying a mortgage in 15 years. And I do know that everybody is not in that position. So it's our obligation as political leaders to give that generation the opportunity. And I see the CPP going a long way to give them that hope and opportunity.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Leal. Councillor Chica.
Thank you very much, Chair Beamer. I'm just, this is more of a question for Director Appleby, if that's possible. Just wondered if there's a need for any massaging of language in the next week. I would be available, and I believe Councillor Duguay would be available as co-liaisons to meet with you if needed. Is that a needed or a possibility? That's one question I had.
Through the chair, I think if there's any need to kind of massage the wording of, say, the motion that was put forward, we could certainly chat about that.
And thank you. Supplemental. Just wondered, the H that exists here, the 7525, for the facility services and matters. So 75 is enshrined for affordable housing. Is the 25, is it possible to amend it, or is it already enshrined for it to be Climate Action Plan 2.0 and parks conservation or outdoor recreational purposes? Is that already understood? I just want to make sure of that.
Through the chair, it's enshrined so that 25% amount for class 2 dollars that we collect through the class 2 permits is to be used only for either the park element or the green building standards or development standards.
And the language is there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again, Director Appleby and all of the planning team for this sojourn and for bringing us to this place and for the compromises that have occurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cheek. Any further comments or questions? All right, I think we've had a good debate. Moved by Councillor LaChica. We will take a vote. And I'm a yay. And that is carried, and it's unanimous. Thank you, staff, for great work. All right, colleagues, let's move to our consent agenda. We'll try to move through this as efficiently as possible. 13A, articulating arterial platform fire pump per vehicle. Mayor Leal.
I'll move the recommendation, and I do have a question for Deputy Chief Kavanaugh. I think he's here. My question is, Deputy just went through the CPP height limits are going to go up in the city of Peterborough. We've recently approved 2 17-story apartment buildings. Does this piece of equipment help you to respond in case of a fire as heights go up in the city of Peterborough?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. This aerial device is taller than the 1992 unit that it's replacing and is one of the tallest on the market. Though it won't reach 17 stories specifically, in taller buildings, the building construction requirements change, and so do the firefighting techniques. However, this equipment will support those different techniques and will enhance firefighter safety and fighting those fires in tall buildings.
Thanks very much, Deputy. Appreciate your response.
Great. Moved by Mayor Leal. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. 13C, Municipal Housing Facility Designation 221 Wing Street. Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I have an amendment that I have submitted to Natalie today. Okay. And I'll speak to it after I'm done. So it is, I believe, added to C that the legal agreement authorized and recommendations, oh, this might be a new one. Apologies. That the agreement authorized in recommendation C require the proponent to support occupancy for identified priority populations through a documented referral process in a manner determined by and to the satisfaction of the service manager. The reason that I have that in there is, if I may, Chair, on page 2, there is language that says the proponent has indicated a willingness to support a range of priority populations, including seniors, newcomers, persons with disabilities, women and children fleeing violence, Indigenous peoples, and other vulnerable households. That language, which I spoke with Joe Crooks about, our housing manager, he just verified that this would tighten that up and allow the service manager to approve those groups. So,
okay, are we able to get that up on the screen? Oh, there it is. I'll give everybody a second, and it has been sent to the clerk, of course. Any comments or questions on that one? So staff, just with any amendment, will there be any ramifications or changes you want to give a call out to council? Probably Commissioner Laidman.
Through you, Chair Beamer. No, Councillor Crowley was in touch with the housing manager, and certainly it's something that's satisfactory to staff. Thanks.
Okay, comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Crowley. The amendment will take a vote. That is carried. Back to the amended main motion. Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question. After I was talking with Mr. Crooks about the amendment, something else came up. So I wanted to know if I could, I think Joe is actually in the building, is he? Oh, hello, sir. How are you? I have a question for you, my friend. Through you, Chair. The question that I have is that this project's receiving $640,000 in capital funding, plus our tax exemption, but what funding is allocated for ongoing operating or support services, not just sort of like the brick and mortar service?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. We meet with the proponents as we're developing our plans, and we expect that every capital investment we make is going to need an increase of either municipal rent subs or increased homelessness support funding. At this present time, we have to get creative, I guess, essentially, to fill these properties in a properly mixed building without the lack of increased funding. So we meet with the developer, we and the homelessness team combined, we determine the right fix or the right mix for the building where we can try and limit the need for rent subsidies or limit the need for additional support funding, as those are both limited pots.
Thank you, Chair. If I may ask one more question to follow up. So can you talk to the lack of funding that we're experiencing with operational supports? What that looks like? That might be two questions, but yeah.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, I can, sir. So our provincial HPP funding was allocated in 2023, but has been sort of there's been no increase. There's no increase this year, and there's no increase next year. So every building that we build, we do have to plan for supports and do our best to plan for supports. But with the limited increase of funding, that's just our number one struggle.
Thank you, Chair. I guess that's the extent of my questions. Just I wanted to highlight the fact that we are getting shortchanged by the province continually year after year, and we need that provincial partner that doesn't seem to exist right now. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. Any further comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Crowley. We'll take a vote on the amended motion. And that is carried. Moving right along, 14A, December 31st, 2025 financial report. Mayor Leal.
Yep, Mr. Chair, I'll move the recommendations. And I anticipated when this a report was prepared that there might be a question regarding the 826,943 representing police services credit adjustment. That day would be transferred to reserves and allocated as it's been indicated in report. Just to provide some context here, Mr. Chair, this credit was a result of changes that have occurred with WSIB. And secondly, it also has to do with our Industrial Alliance employee external extended health benefits. When you look at those two categories, there's always estimates and actuals, and the estimates were much higher than the actuals. So we've been able to achieve that credit accordingly. We also anticipate that a portion of that reserve will be used to correct a historical challenge that we've had with pay equity. Pay equity, it's lasted for a period of time, and this will allow us to do that. And more importantly, Mr. Chair, one of the challenges that has been encountered with police budgeting in the last decade with the city is that often, or it happened all the time, that the police were not able to keep their full reserve amount, a surplus amount. Traditionally, it's been divided to 50% retained by the city of Peterborough and 50% by the police. That is not the normal practice throughout communities in the province of Ontario. But what it's done is, if we had allowed the surpluses to build up in reserve over the last decade, when we implemented the human resource plan, which was approved by council a number of years ago, to hire additional constables, our uniform staff, and civilians, the money should have been drawn upon out of the reserve to handle those costs instead of going to the increase in the tax rate. So with those, Mr. Chair, Chief Betts is in the audience this evening. If one might need some additional clarity on these two elements in this report.
Thank you very much for that, Mary Lou. Moved by Mary Lou. I have Councillor Reel and Burke. Councillor Reel.
Through the chair to Commissioner Freeman, the police board are asking to keep all of the $827,943 and put it in reserves. I believe in your report, you stated that the police will be asking for a 4% increase in the budget request. How do you know that is true? What would be the result if we use the $800,000 to lower the tax, their budget ask?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. A couple of thoughts. First of all, when it comes to the 4%, I'm happy to provide further clarity when we get to the budget information report. But essentially, that is my own city staff kind of perspective on the increases, recent increases from police services that have been provided by Council to Police Services. I am anticipating as treasurer a more a reduced request. So that's really my estimate of what that request is. Mr. Chairman, could the $826,000 be applied to the police ask in 2027? I think the answer to that is, first, there's a couple of things. First of all, Mr. Chairman, we know that the police radio system is at end of life. We're already having conversations with the consultant Harris, and the cost for that system is a city responsibility. What we are anticipating, what I'm hoping that council will support here this evening, is a request to allow police services to keep the monies that the council's already provided them, so that we can actually use those monies for a city obligation that we know is coming. And let's save the back and forth of requesting some of the surplus back and then having police to make the ask. Because what will happen is we're going to increase our capital budget by whatever the amount is, essentially, in next year's budget. So the other piece is, of course, the pay equity. There is, just like the city by law has to fulfill its pay equity obligations, so does police, and the portion fulfills the legislative requirements from a pay equity perspective. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have another question on that, but not related to the police.
Yep, if it's in the report, you can go ahead.
Okay. On page 413, the Water Services User Fee Schedule Form 6, how many properties are affected, and what is the dollar figure for excluding them? And what is your plan to bring these budgets under control?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's probably maybe 8 or 10 properties. It's not very many. If the councilor is referring to properties that are on a private well that may hook up to the city's sewer system, it's not very many. Probably less than 10.
Okay. Okay. No, you got 5 minutes, so you can get 5 minutes. Actually, you have 10 if you want, but you're on your first 5.
What is your plan to bring the budget under control?
Mr. Chair, that Mr. Chairman, that's a big question. So I believe that the context, and I'll take it and the counselor can correct me, but I believe the context is in the water services budget because that's the fee schedule he's referring to. Mr. Chairman, the water fees cover the cost of providing the water services. There is no impact to the taxpayer.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Riel. Councillor Burke.
Chair Beamer, thank you. I'm going to speak to the part of this report that has to do with the recommendation for the police services credit, the adjusted funds. The report, as has been stated, recommends transferring the full $800,000+ into police-related reserves. And to me, it's crazy that council is being presented with only one option here, and that option that we're being presented with mirrors the Police Services Board request. Council is not being given any other options to consider what to do with this scenario. That decision has been made for us, and it's being presented to mirror what the Police Services Board is asking. There's a whole context to me as a councillor being interested in money that's left over. We've had unprecedented tax rate increases. We have a police budget, a police renovations budget that has ballooned, in my opinion. And these funds actually arose, like it was stated, from WSIB and benefits costs were lower than forecast. So this isn't grant funding. This is not externally restricted funding. This is not the result of council previously approving a dedicated reserve strategy. The Police Services Board letter acknowledges that staff at one point a long time ago recommended starting a radio reserve for this reason. I believe it was 15 years ago. So we're being asked, council is being asked, the taxpayers are being asked to address a known long-term internal planning issue through a one-time year-end adjustment. So I would have expected council in this circumstance to be provided with different options. I'm interested, I'm going to pose these questions to the public and to you all. I don't expect an answer because I don't think we have time, but I'm interested in whether there are any legal requirements that these credit adjustments remain within the police reserves, or does council have the discretion regarding how they're allocated? Are these funds considered city's funds subject to council direction or police service funds? What other legally permissible options are considered for these funds? And had the police board not requested these funds, what would staff have recommended council do with the additional $800,000+? I'm interested to know why alternate options were not presented to us, such as transfers to the capital levy reserve, tax stabilization, debt reduction, infrastructure reserves, housing reserves, or consideration through a future budget process. Why has no rate, if the radio issue is such an issue where it's at its breaking point, why was there no radio reserve funded over the past 12 years if this need was known when the original agreement was entered into? And if we're going to support a police emergency communications system reserve, I believe council needs to have a comprehensive report outlining the life cycle costs, the procurement options, replacement timelines, operation impacts, and all those things. So I'm not suggesting that emergency communication infrastructure is unimportant. I am questioning whether council has been given sufficient information tonight with the options before us in how we can direct nearly $827,000. If we have discretion over these funds, then I believe we should consider being presented with alternatives to understand the implications of each option before making a decision tonight in a quarterly financial update. So I'm going to cut to the chase. Instead of having staff offer me those questions, I'm going to move to defer that decision. So refer B1.1 and B1, sorry, refer BI.1 and BI.2 2 and have staff come back to council presenting us what our options are. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Freeman, did you want to ramifications of that?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I brought forward the recommendations for council consideration because I agree with the Police Services Board as the treasurer of the city of Peterborough. This is a great first of all, I know that the cost, the infrastructure, we're talking about radios and police cars, that contract is coming to an end. It's 12 years old. So the councillor mentioned 15. It's 12 years old. It's coming to an end. We've already got the pricing on what it's going to cost if we were going out and replace it. That's $2.9 million. The police do make reference to it in the letter. And what I'm trying to avoid through these recommendations is to avoid yet another large capital project for police in our capital budget in 2027. I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to solve the issue with monies we've already given to police services so that the taxpayer is not yet asked yet again to provide more money for police services. That's what I'm trying to do by the recommendations in the report. Yes, I concur with the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. So speaking to the deferral. So
Just a point of
wait.
order, though.
No,
Like,
I've got others on the list, but I'll put you back. So speaking to the deferral, Mayor Leal, and then Councillor Burke a second time. Mayor Leal to the deferral.
Yeah, on the deferral, Mr. Chair. And in fact, the reserve for the police emergency communications was suggested by Mr. Freeman and others that it would be prudent to start this. And what I don't get here, I mean, we got people in uniform. This radio system is coming to the end of its life. I mean, are we prepared to put people in jeopardy? I mean, it's the old line where the general was talking to the U.S. president and said, well, it's always easy to make decisions when you never wore the uniform. We have an obligation, in my view, and I get it. Maybe some around this table don't share my view, but we have an obligation to the men and women that wear the uniform to give them the best equipment available because they're going in harm's way each and every day, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Mayor Leal, speaking to the deferral, Councillor Burke a second time.
yeah, I mean, I'm not in a position where I'm going to respond to hangman arguments. The argument is not whether or not we support the safety of our people in uniform. The motion to defer is to present council, who are the arbitrators of this money, of taxpayers' money, with what the options are. And we've heard from our treasurer that he made that decision based on input from the police board. And I'm not disrespecting his decision, but as a councillor who is the arbiter of taxpayers' funds, I would appreciate the opportunity in a circumstance like this, which is an atypical circumstance, for us to be given a full range of options. I went to a new councillor training, and the thing that stuck with me is that the guy who was delivering it has tons of experience in municipal politics, and he said council should always be given every option. And I'm being presented here as a councillor when this has been in the paper, when my constituents are asking me what is going to happen with this reserve fund when we are in crisis points across the city based on the same reasoning that we're supporting the police. And they're asking me what are the options available. And here we are tonight. I'm an elected official being presented one option. So it's putting me in a position where I have to be either for or against the option. What I'm asking for is a deferral so staff can fill us in and cut the public in to all the workshopping that was done, that I hope you did, when the news came to you that there was this surplus. And then that would give council the opportunity, because we are the arbiter of those decisions, to say this or that. And at that point, sure, you can make the case for why you would want to support the men and women in uniform. You can make the case for what state the radios are or whatever. But that's not what I'm offering here. I will not respond to the hangman argument that by moving a deferral, I don't support people's safety and well-being. That's not what we're talking about. I'm asking for a deferral so that council can be cut into some of the workshopping that has happened between the Police Services Board and senior staff at City Hall. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Speaking to the deferral, Councillor Baldwin and Mayor Leal a second time. Councillor Baldwin, deferral.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I mean, the options are pretty simple. The council can decide to take back the money tonight or next week at council, and then have the police service ask for those monies in 2027 budget. I think Commissioner Freeman has explained why he's made the recommendation, and it was the same recommendation made by the Police Services Board. Chief Betts has been here for 3 hours. I would suggest respectfully, Mr. Chair, if the councillor wanted some additional information, that Chief Betts might be available to shed some light on this particular issue. But I'm not going to support a deferral. Absolutely not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Leal, deferral second time, and Councillor Chica. Okay, Councillor Chica, deferral.
Thank you. Sorry, my microphone was going in and out. I so appreciate the logic that's been presented by my colleague to the left. You know, we represent our constituents, the taxpayer. You know, we've gone through a lot. If we look at the context of police and renovations budgets in this term and in this last year, we went from 60 to 90 million in terms of over and above what we had intended to spend. I mean, the public, the taxpayer, you know, we're all perceiving this, that was a whole lot more than what was anticipated and what was communicated. So when we're in a surplus situation like this, absolutely, we need to take stock. We need to look at our priorities. We need to step back from the canvas and see where the gaps are and be presented with some options. And it isn't just a one-off and it's a done deal as it arrives to our council table. We need to hear what the options are based on the priorities and the shortfalls we're having in other areas, and make a sound decision based on our fiduciary responsibility as councillors. Thank you very much for that deferral, Councillor Burke, through you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chica. Councillor Brolin for a second final time.
Yeah, very quickly, Mr. Chair. There are two priorities. Number one, pay equity. We have to pay people what they deserve and what they're entitled to legally. Number two, officer safety. You can't have an archaic communication system out there that's at end of life. You want to talk about liability, don't replace the system and see what happens. Those are the two priorities. Pay equity, communication, the Harris communication system. Those are the priorities tonight. That's why they're here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brolin. Councillor Crowley, deferral.
Thank you, Chair. I won't support the deferral. I think that the problem that we're having is in the community. Yes, the police budgets are rising. Yes, we know that for years, the police services in Peterborough were underfunded. So like everything else that we have experienced over the last 15 years, it seems like we are playing catch up here. But I had a great conversation with Chief Betts. He assisted some language that I was coming up with in a notice of motion that I brought last year, that the province desperately needs to help municipalities fund police services. So we're not getting into the weeds where we're arguing over, should we take this $800,000 back and then give it right back to them later on? You know, there's language in the Police Act stating that we need to fund an effective and efficient police service. And nowhere in the Police Act does it actually spell out exactly what that means. And so what that means to the municipality is when Chief Betts or when the Police Services Board comes to us and says, we need XYZ, we aren't in a position to question whether or not they need XYZ and whether or not we feel it's effective and efficient, because the province has said they need an effective and efficient police service. So I think part of what we're seeing in the community is people that are upset because of rising police costs, because of a police act that is somewhat nebulous in some manner. We are seeing a disproportionate allocation of grants to police services throughout the municipalities. So somewhere like Peterborough might not receive the amount of grants that some other municipality like Toronto may receive. So, I mean, I can't support it because, like Commissioner Freeman said, we're going to be spending it on the police budget coming up anyway. So why take it back allocate it to something else and then have to spend that again in a few months. It is what it is. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Burke. We'll vote on the deferral. Councillor Purnell, are you able to vote on that one? Councillor Purnell? Okay, we'll put her absent. Oh, thank you, Councillor Purnell. And that is lost. All right, back to the main motion. Moved by Mayor Leal. Comments or questions? We'll take a vote on the main motion. And that is carried. All right, 14B, 2027 budget information, Mayor Leal.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I had a question. I think all of us have been had some time with the consulting group, Ernst & Young, talking about the efficiencies to be achieved and looking at alternative services delivery model. And I know we all look forward to their recommendations, perhaps coming into being in September. My question is really to Mr. Freeman. In light of the fact that they will be making a series of recommendations, I believe in September, which will make sure that all candidates running in the 2026 municipal election might have to take a stand on some of these recommendations. How would these recommendations be factored into the budget of 2027 and beyond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the opportunity to comment on that. And as His Worship has said, of course, the Ernst & Young recommendations will inform options for Council's consideration. So what's the timing? So here's what I believe is going to happen. First of all, I believe the first comments coming from Ernst & Young will provide a current state status, and you're going to see that in August. That's the time. So kind of two steps. Where are we at in the current status in August? And then I believe that the final consultant's report, we're hoping to come in September, as His Worship has indicated, which I think effectively means that the implementation and the recommendations, it will give us some time. Obviously, we've got to digest what the consultant brings forward. And then we have to work towards implementing and incorporating that into the 2027 budget to the extent that we can, albeit I suspect that there will be some recommendations that will be for all of it will be for Council's purview. Some of it perhaps staff can work into the draft, the preliminary budget the Council will receive in November. But more importantly, I think some of the recommendations will come forward for the detailed debate from a 2027 budget perspective. So hopefully, Mr. Chairman, that provides some clarity. I'm going to look at just to take a sneak peek at my colleague, CIO Reyna, just to make sure that I've captured anything that he might or ask him if he wants to jump in on anything I've said there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you did exceptionally well explained. The only thing is that to answer your question, sir, we will be bringing, because of the new council term, so the budget process will fall into January, February cycle. So that's the time will be, because it has to be endorsed and approved by the new term of the council. We will do the discussions. Everybody can debate on that, but the final budget approval, it has to happen in the January, February session.
Mr. Chair, if I might share some of the general stuff I shared with Ernst & Young with regards to the budget. One of the things I asked them to seriously look at is to provide one budget over the 4-year period with incremental changes each and every year to reflect collective agreements that we'd have in place. The reason I suggested that amongst some other things that we had a chat about, because basically what we have here now, 1% represents $2 million. So if we're looking at operational savings of 10 million, 8 million, and 6 million, in order to avoid a shock in one budget year, you probably want to spread it over 4 years. So that's why I suggested to them you look at a 4-year window of a budget going forward. If and I heard members around this table talk about efficiencies and tax reductions. So if we want to get it into the 3% range from 6.6%, we're probably looking in the neighborhood of $8 million, either in operational savings or alternative service delivery model mechanisms that you'd probably want to spread over a 4-year period. So that's just my thoughts, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mayor Lewell. So moved by Mayor Lewell. I have Councillor Burke, Baldwin, Crowley, Reel. Councillor Burke.
Thank you. I'm just I guess this is to CAO Reyna and Commissioner Friedman, but I'm just going on a little bit of a memory lane here with the budget. So my first budget was with Sandra Clancy. We had 3 budget books and we did it that way. The second year under CAO Reyna, we were down to 1 or 2 budget books consolidated, and we had this system where we were picking a status quo budget, you know, pink cloud budget, and a no frills budget. We had 3 options. Council set those 3 options. That was moving forward. And if I remember correctly, last year was when we actually had a full budget presentation. You were up at the front, and at that point you gave us the keep the lights on number. It was a 10 or 11% number just to maintain our current levels. And now here we are with a report that to me feels very light. There's, you know, it goes over at a high level some of the budget impacts, which we've known because those are decisions we've made. So I'm just wondering from the staff perspective, are we running and gunning here? Are we just changing the format every year as we go? Can we expect to have a summer when we're back in August, like a pre-budget meeting where we set some guidelines? Can you help me understand what's happening? I'm okay going with the flow, but it seems to me like we've had some more substantive conversations here. Maybe it's just because it's at 6%, you know, it might be easier for everyone, but you know, I've appreciated as a counselor to have some input ahead of the real, you know, coming to focus with the final product.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the councillor raises an excellent point, and I hadn't thought about the running and gunning phrase, but that's really interesting. Mr. Chairman, as you know, it is his worship's budget, but we are in an election year, and so as staff, as the treasurer, I still have my fiduciary duties. I am still working behind the scenes to prepare the budget. And knowing, though, that that budget is going to be presented to the new council, the incoming council. And so I found myself at a bit of a crossroads in terms of what are the recommendations that the treasurer is bringing forward. I felt compelled, I need to say something. I needed to inform council and the community what I was seeing in terms of the coming down the radar from a 2027 budget perspective and get that information out there. And so that was what this report is. Is there still going to be opportunities where the treasurer is coming to the podium presenting a preliminary budget? Absolutely. That's going to come a bit later. That will come. I will do that as the treasurer in November. Hopefully, that's my anticipated timing. How will we engage the community? There will be opportunities to engage the community at that point in time. So a bit later in the process, acknowledging that we are in an election year. When it comes to that detailed debate, though, that will be with the new council, the incoming council.
And Chair Beamer, I'm not saying it'll be short, but I'll end it after this. But I guess so that 6.62% or whatever the 6-ish% number that's here, is that similar to the 10 or 11% number you presented to us? That's the sort of like we're going to maintain the things that council has supported over the years at a sort of base level, just without any increases, but without any drastic reductions. And then you went over really well in the report the big factors that are considerations, but the everyday stuff, the grants, the art stuff, you know, our staffing, things like that. Is that point whatever number the sort of, let's just keep moving without changing too much drastically?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think the councillors captured it very well. That is what I know right now to operate the city in 2027, but admittedly, it's a work in progress. So as I find out new information, I will be incorporating that into the draft budget going forward, into the preliminary budget. Let me get my terminology correct, going forward. And I will use all the information I'm gathering to inform what that number is. So however, that's what I know today to be true. So yes, it incorporates all the services being provided today in 2027 with estimations for staffing and so on and so on. You mentioned.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Baldwin.
Chair, just a quick question to CEO Reyna. With respect to the budget and the discussions that the councillors have had with the consultants, the 1 hour session that I have had, Mr. Reyna, went very, very quickly. We were talking a bit about big ideas and big savings. They'd indicated at that time there might be another opportunity where we could get to the nitty gritty, the small things. Are you anticipating that the consultants will get back to councillors generally or on an individualized basis, or would you be able to follow up? I'd like another opportunity if I might.
Through Mr. Chair, I think we will, let me follow up with them, and I don't know what we have committed to them. So definitely if there is an opportunity, we want to loop in all the council back and give a chance so that you can, because we are expecting interim report from them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baldwin. I have Councillor Crowley, Real, Mayor Leal, second time. Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Commissioner Freeman. I know Mayor Leal picked up on something that I was going to ask you, and it's something I've asked you, I think, every year that I've been on council, and that is moving to a multi-year budget. Are you sort of seeing that this is 2027 might be the last single year budget and 2028 may be the first of 4 multi-year budgets?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. I expect that, just as the councillor has said, given the fact that this is for the incoming council, but yet we don't know what the priorities of the incoming council are. So this will be the last year, I expect, of a single year budget. And then that 4-year cycle, that rhythm will start from there. So starting with the 2028, 9, 30, 31, that would be that 4-year rhythm. And so that's what we could expect.
Thank you, Councillor Crowley. And yes, that was your idea a few years ago, so good job. Councillor Real.
Through the chair to Mr. Freeman, the number at 6.62, and then there's been a comment that this consulting firm is going to come in either the end of September, October. What impact do you think that they're going to have? This kind of an unfair question, but how do you feel that that's going to have any input or anything to do with the number or the changing of the number? You've already said that the 6.62 is an inclusive number to keep the city going. So regardless of what the consultant comes in with at the end of September, October, how does that change the number from what they're going to bring? I mean, you're telling us to keep the lights on, or whatever you want to call it, is 6.62 right now. That may be a massage, but I can't see where the consultant, what report he's going to bring back, and there's going to be this epiphany that's going to solve the problem. I'm trying to figure this out. So,
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the comments from the councillor, and certainly the fact that the review that the consultant is doing is, it's been. We've identified it as an efficiency and effectiveness review. It certainly implies that there's going to be savings inherent in the document and the recommendations they bring forward. But to the councillor's point, will they see areas in our budget where perhaps we're too thin or not providing an appropriate levels of service? I fully expect that too. So like council, I honestly, I can't wait to see what they've got to say. And I know that part of that exercise is comparing us to our peers out there. And so they're going through that exercise, doing some benchmarking, and yeah, we'll see what they have to say. So again, I'll defer to CEO Reyna if he wants to say anything additional.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a nice journey. I try to defer that side today. Richard is in this spree of deferring this side. I just want to say that first of all, a sincere gratitude and thanks to the mayor and council that this is the first service review in the history of City of Peterborough, and it took us 175 years to do. So I'll give you an example of then when they were interviewing me. My interview went for almost 3 hours. So because I also want them to review each and every our arc structure. Is there any is there fat gravy here? Because we want to. This is all about the future. So to answer your question, I see there will be a lot of recommendations. Whether we are on some places we are overinflated, or other places the alternate doing. Can we contract out few services? So they are doing very severe benchmarking, and they have gone to our financial books big time. They got a lot of data. So based on my experience, because this is in my service life, this is my 8th service review, which I have encountered. So do expect some good recommendations. That's all I'll say.
Through the chair, you mean I commend the CEO because I've pushed for this for a long time to actually run the business as a business. It's a $500 million business. And certainly somebody that's been in that's had several small businesses and, and build it with their own money. I know what it's like to have employees and certainly making decisions. But I mean, I'm hearing a number bannered around at 3%. And from the world that I come from, to reach a 3% means massive layoffs. Our biggest cost is wages, pensions, and benefits. And I'm not saying I want to see a whole bunch of people laid off, but in the private sector, that's what the biggest cost is wages, pensions, and benefits. So to reach that number, and I'm not saying we're going to reach, it'd be nice to be at 3%. But what I'm hearing what Commissioner Freeman's saying is to keep the lights on is 6.62, and I would like to see that number driven down. But any comments on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, all I will say is stay optimistic, sir, and excited about because I'm very excited about their recommendations. So let's see. And it's a very company of global repute. They are experts in that because they have more hawkish eyes than us. So you'll be surprised what they bring forward.
All right,
Thank you.
Councillor, would you like your second 5? You good? Thank you, thank you. Mayor Leal a second time, Councillor DeGay, Burke a second time. Mayor Leal.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Chair. They were very generous with me. They gave me about an hour and a half. And because we're getting into conversations, I'll just address it. I mean, one of the ways that you could drive down costs is alternative models of delivery. And that could mean a lot. And my sense is from the conversation, and Councillor Baldwin, they did say every member of council will have a second opportunity to have a chat with them. But if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, in the conversations that I had with them, they're going to make some pretty serious recommendations. And just to address 2027 for a moment, I can't reflect on what others chatted about, but certainly they thought there would be some short-term recommendations that could be implemented in 2027 in order to start the 4-year budget, which would commence in 2028.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor Leal. Councillor DeGay.
Thank you, Chair Beamer. I just need to clarify with you, is this an opportunity to provide comments as well as questions? Excellent. On page 5 of the staff report, it speaks to the efficiency and effectiveness review, which many have said here. I'm like many, I was afforded an hour of, not an hour and a half, Your Worship, but an hour of time. But I am looking forward to the results of the review because as Commissioner Freeman said, it may identify where we're not spending enough monies on certain priorities, or in other instances, we're spending too much or unnecessarily spending on monies that is inappropriate. I'd like to continue then to page 6 of the report, transfer to other organizations. starting first with the paramedics, it indicates that the service has drawn down substantively from their reserve. Appears they have no reserve. I am also aware that we're in the midst of a review with the county on our shared services, and I don't see the report necessarily yet speaking to that. Perhaps that's information forthcoming. I would welcome same. I am very concerned about the health units request, 5%, and they've indicated in 2026 there was a one-time injection of funds from the province, but then it was meant to be one time, and we'd be looking at a 20% funding increase. Now, our health unit, as it operated as an entity within the Peterborough area, was very efficient and cost effective. We merged, and my perspective is we're picking up the slack, perhaps, of an inefficiently run organization on the other side. I just think it's unfair. But I will wait to hear from them. So I am, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking forward to hearing more from the paramedics, and particularly our shared service agreement, which I think, if I can ask CAO Reyna, is the shared service agreement, is it being evaluated as part of the Ernst Young review or effective? No, it is not. No, yes, no.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's not being evaluated.
Thank you, but I would look forward to the results of ongoing discussions with the county. I am concerned that the paramedics have drawn down from the reserve. It appears there is no reserve left. If I've read this report right, may have read it incorrectly. And I am concerned about the public health unit requests of 20%. The principle concerns me greatly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Degay, for that. Councillor Burke for a second time, then we'll try to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair Beamer. I also had I felt so lifted after that efficiency, the meeting with the consultants. I had about a little over 2 hours. It was great, but I felt amazing. I felt also excited to hear the results from that. But why I put my hand up was like, I really want to commend staff and our CAO for this report, because we have had some real shockers of, like, I know I mentioned all the ways in which we've been presented the early on budget, and we've had some shockers, and staff have done a great job of just, convincing us that these are the necessary changes that we need to make as a municipality for years and years and decades of underfunding in areas. And I believe that this number at 6%, it's drastic. It's almost 50% less than the one from last year to keep the lights on. So I think that it just shows that we're making progress through these investments that we've made. I read recently that the city of Buffalo, the mayor, put forward a 25% tax increase, and their council got it down to 19%. So this is 2026. It feels to me like a positive thing, like we have preemptively done the work that other municipalities have continued to push down the road, and are experiencing these much more drastic increases than even our most drastic. So I'm a little hesitant to sort of like jinx it. I hope we continue to go in the right direction with this. But I did want to say, especially to Jasbir and to Richard, that thank you. And this is sort of like the proof from those shockers, the numbers that were more the double-digit numbers that we've seen previously. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reel. Oh, sorry. I was looking at Councillor Reel. So sorry, Councillor Burke. Thank you, Councillor Burke. Commissioner Freeman, you wanted to make a comment, and then Councillor Reel. Commissioner Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just circle back to Councillor Duguay. Councillor, the reserves mentioned in the paramedics is the city's reserves of money set aside. So essentially what we were doing, anytime that paramedics had a surplus, we tucked that away into reserve. Anytime they had a deficit, we would pull it out. So there had been some accumulated monies over the years. However, with the 2025 year end, I believe we pulled everything out of the budget that the city had set aside for paramedics. So that's the piece we drained. It's not in reference to anything that the county might have.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. So Councillor Reel.
Through the chair, comments that Councillor Duguay made about the Board of Health. I sit on the stewardship committee, and it's a closed session item. We're working on this. Last year, they wanted a 19% increase. We come in at 5%. So we're working at it right now to try and bring that down, but I can't convey what's happened at the stewardship committee, which is the budget committee that I sit on, that we're desperately working at that number to bring it down. There's some mitigating facts why what has happened with the amalgamation. So I'll give you a little bit of comfort level. There's some of us there, and we're working on driving that number down, just like we did last year.
Thank you, Councillor Reel, for that. All right, moved by Mayor Leal. Good discussion. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. All right, 3 items left. Let's get through these. Tower concurrence at 95 Marina Boulevard. Councillor Crowley.
Thank you, Chair. So this is just a quick question to Commissioner Nelson. I did have an amendment ready, but I think that you've sort of set my mind at ease. Can you confirm that the petition of the residents' written opposition is going to be forwarded to the ISED as sort of part of the concurrence package? Or, because I know I was going to make an amendment to say that we need to do that, but is it going to be included anyway?
Through the chair, it is my understanding that the entire report with the attachments would be forwarded to the ISED, who oversees the process.
Okay,
Yeah.
and just a follow-up question, just so that I can ask it. So there's no room for maneuvering that tower where it's going to go. That's where it's going to go, and that's what they're saying.
Through the chair, based on comments and feedback that was provided to the proponent, staff had asked if a revision, and the proponent has basically optimized the location to provide the greatest separation from basically the zone residential properties in the area. So that's basically, at this point, they've optimized based on that location.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Moved by Councillor Crowley. Any further comments or questions? Just quickly, the neighbors have some legitimate concerns about the placement of this tower, so I'll be opposing it. Moved by Councillor Crowley. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. All right, 15E, designation of 270, 280 Perry Street. Councillor DeGay.
Yes, Chair Beamer, I'll be very quick. Director Appleby, if I might, could you clarify for my benefit, my colleagues' benefit, how is 270, 280 Perry Street designated in our official plan?
Through the chair, I will have a quick look. It is most likely an industrial conversion area, but I'll double check here.
When I'm looking at the official plan, it appears to be Schedule A. The reason I'm asking, the reason I inquire, Mr. Chairman, is this is a property that will be in very close proximity to our major event and sports facility. And I'm just wondering if the designation would create complications if this property were contemplated for some redevelopment at a future date. That's the only inquiry. I note that the property owner has not yet responded, but I just was forward thinking if the designation would create a complication for a redevelopment of this piece of land.
Through the chair, that property is indeed an industrial conversion area, which essentially means it is envisioned to transition to other uses over time, in particular the new CPP bylaw. There is allowance for additional building height in this area beyond what you would see in other areas of the central area.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not necessarily opposed to the opportunity to designate. It was mainly an expression that our official plan is saying one thing, that this is meant to be an area to be converted with additional verticality and building opportunity. I'm only concerned with the designation potentially frustrate future development. It's just an expression of concern, but I will not oppose this designation as presented. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moved by Councillor DeGay. Councillor Crowley.
Thank you. Maybe this, I'll direct this to Director Appleby, through you, Chair. It's the former Ray Bestis site. Are we aware of any contamination on that site?
Through the chair, I'm not personally aware, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if there's something there based on the historic use.
Just to follow up then, would the heritage designation of that building cause any problems for environmental remediation on that site at some point down the road?
Through the chair, I would suggest no.
Okay.
It really depends on what type of land use you're looking to propose. And so if someone want to introduce, say, residential or more sensitive use to that property over time, the Environmental Protection Act legislation would kick in and would force that remediation to occur.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor DeGay. We'll take a vote. Councillor Purnell, is it coming through for you? Yep, we gotcha. And that is carried. Last item, 16A, Peterborough Housing Municipal Services Corporation Transfer Report. Councillor Reel.
Through the chair to Commissioner Laidman, I'm a little foggy here. You're taking assets or buildings that are part of Peterborough Housing Corp to make an MSU or an MSC, whatever you want to call it. So what role is Peterborough Housing Corp going to play? Are we going to be just the administration and the maintenance? Or what is happening here, because they are properties in our portfolio?
Sure, through you, Chair Beamer. I think it is necessary to clarify that the 4 properties that are a part of this report are city-owned, not Peterborough Housing Corporation owned. The original thought in creating the Municipal Service Corporation a number of years ago was that eventually we may be able to move Peterborough Housing Corp properties into this for debt purposes, but these 4 houses are actually owned specifically by the city. So that's why we're moving these ones first. They're fully owned by the city. There's no debt on them. They're fully functional. They are not required to have a subsidy. So none of these are PHC owned. They're all city owned. We have contracts with PHC to operate these buildings on the city's behalf currently. So that's the involvement of PHC because that's their expertise. But these buildings themselves are owned full and outright by the city and have been purchased over time for various reasons by the city, but and we've just held on to them.
The chair, I'll move the report. I just needed that clarification because we do the administration and the maintenance on that building. So just wanted some clarification.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Reel. Moved by Councillor Reel. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. All right. Notice of motion, Councillor Chica.
Thank you very much, Chair Beamer. I know that it's got a long list of whereas. I don't think I need to read it because it's been posted in our agenda. But this is really coming from the fact that we've been expediting our priority list of buildings that are up for designation. We've really asked our PACAC committee to
do a mammoth task, and they've worked so hard in the last 2 years that this has been an issue because we have a deadline. It was extended, but by the end of the year, things that are on the list that have not yet been designated will be removed according to the province. So the fact that, and I'm seeing that Colin Walsh from Heritage is here with us. He and his team and Director Appleby, PACAC is a really thriving committee that makes a lot of decisions. I have a letter from them related to this motion that I'd like to read. This is such an important matter around property insurance on designated heritage properties. As committee chair, and this is from Stuart Hamilton, of the council appointed Heritage Committee, I'd like to offer the committee's full support of this proposed motion regarding insurance and designated heritage properties. I believe taking the matter to our provincial government is an excellent course of action. We have concerns raised here in the city of Peterborough, as in Prince Edward County, where this was unanimously passed. Although city staff have done an excellent job educating concerned property owners, we still find that it's an ongoing issue that insurance companies and insurance brokers here in the city are hesitant to insure heritage properties, and there's a misinterpretation of the Ontario Heritage Act in this regard. So the Heritage Act actually states that insurance premiums should not go up because of a heritage designation. They may increase because of premiums for older buildings that have a variety of issues like outdated wiring, old heating systems, etc. But some companies do not insure buildings over a certain age, but designation itself does not place additional requirements on the insurer and should not affect premiums. This is language from the Heritage Act. Colin Walsh had a letter that was available for building owners, et cetera, for us as a council, for the public, that made that statement. But nonetheless, it becomes an obstacle as we try and make decisions on these designations on a council level. So Councillor Duguay relayed this motion that Prince Edward County had made and passed unanimously not too long ago. I was looking at it as well, and we thought, Peterborough, why not? We have some beautiful buildings that need our protection, that need our preservation, and an obstacle like insurance premiums that shouldn't be going up is a big deal. So we want to here in the motion have it be resolved that the council of the corporation of the city Peterborough calls on the provincial government to investigate why some insurers are raising premiums on heritage designated properties or are denying insurance policies as a result of heritage designation because it's a contravention of provincial guidance. And number two, to bring insurance regulators, insurance industry reps, and heritage professionals together to find solutions that enable the continued protection of our heritage properties without unwarranted financial burden on property owners. Number three, to regulate the impact of heritage designation on insurance premiums through enforcement, education, and new solutions. And our Peterborough Architectural Conservation Advisory Committee be directed to continue exploring ways to educate, and this be forwarded to the Premier, to the Ministry of Citizenship and Multiculturalism, to our MPP, to AMO, to the Financial Services Regulatory Authority and the Canadian Council of Insurance Regulators, and the Insurance Bureau of Canada. I thank Councillor Duguay, my colleague and co-liaison, that we hold this file as well. Thank him for seconding it, and I do hope that Council will consider this as a positive step forward as we look at our heritage properties. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chica. Comments or questions? Moved by Councillor Chica. We'll take a vote. And that is carried, unanimous. Other business. Mayor Leal, other business.
Yeah, thanks very much. Mr. Chair, when I arrived this morning at City Hall, a little before 8 a.m., I got a note from Joe Weeb from Alto, and I want to thank Alto for always keeping me fully updated on what is happening. And I know there might have been some consternation in the city of Peterborough, to put it mildly, with regards to snippets that were provided on the CBC News report. I just want to reassure everybody that under the Alto legislation, Peterborough is enshrined as one of the 7 stops. But I just want to share this with everybody. Following the review of findings, Minister McKinnon, who did an announcement in Kingston today, directed Alto to develop a plan to assess a southern route option between Peterborough and Ottawa that includes a potential stop in Kingston that would interconnect with via rail services, subject to technical feasibility and project requirements. Further, I had a conversation with MP Harrison this afternoon. She was at the Kingston announcement, as was the Provincial Minister of Infrastructure, attended along with Minister McKinnon. So all is well, and we can lower the blood pressure of everybody here in Peterborough.
Councillor Burke, other business.
I just quickly wanted to wish Councillor LaChica's daughter, Tilly, a happy 16th birthday. Sorry, your mom had to be at a council meeting tonight, but maybe that's how you would have wanted it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Any further other business? Councillor Vassiliadis, motion to adjourn. We'll take a vote. And that is carried. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, staff. Thanks for community. Have a good night.